My name is Philip Oya. I'm the Public Affairs um, Officer for the Central California District, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our Resource Advisory Council meeting. I will want to go, I'll turn it over to our RAC Chair, Matt Kingsley.
Hey, good morning, everybody. And Nancy, to answer your question, we are in the east. We're having a great time on the east side. Sorry you're not here. It's a really great morning over here. And can you show that box?
We should be eating those.
Yeah, we just want to make sure you guys know that we did get donuts from the greatest donut shop in the world, King's Donuts here in Bishop. So just we're laying down a marker in case we're in somebody else's country one of these days. Want to welcome everybody to the meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris to do his opening remarks.
Thank you, Matt. And yeah, really appreciate you rubbing it in with the donuts, especially. It's hard enough to not be there and see the beautiful landscape in Bishop, but yeah, the donuts is especially tough. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I did explain why we're virtually today, and again, our preference is to meet in person, but logistical factors and attention to particularly wildland fire issues felt like it was prudent to go virtual today. So thanks for everybody attending. Really, appreciate your focus, and really looking forward to the meeting today and the topics from Bishop. And as always, welcome and appreciate the advice on these topics that the RAC has to provide. And I'll circle back in a minute with some more announcements and kind of relay some information from our new state director. But let me turn it back to you, Philip, on a couple other logistical topics. Thanks.
There you go. Yes. Okay, good. Because we are doing this virtually this time, I wanted to go over a couple of the logistics for the public on our format. If you are joining us online, if you will look down on the bottom of your screen, you should see the chat option, which is open. So if you have something that you would like to put in the chat, absolutely do that there. Also, if you would like to speak or that kind of in the React option, you can click on that one, and there is the raise hand option as well. There is the Q&A session as well that we will be monitoring, and we'll be able to address those as needed. If you do run into any technical issues while either trying whether your audio or your video, I will be putting my cell phone and email in the chat box. Feel free to reach out, text me on that line, or email me, and I'll be able to help you as best I can as the meeting progresses. So any questions, anyone, before we move forward with that? Okay, hearing none, great. Thank you. That's what I have for that one. And then let's see, the next thing to talk. One thing to talk about is just moving forward. So unfortunately, one of our RAC members wasn't able to join us today, and so we don't have a quorum. So we do have the RAC was provided with the meeting minute notes from May of 24, and we can't vote on those because we don't have a quorum. However, if anyone does have any changes or anything that need to be made to those meeting minute notes, I would gladly take those, and then we will put those on the agenda with this meeting minute notes on our February meeting and vote on both of them at that time. So anyone have any questions about the May 24th meeting notes? Hearing none. Very good. Thank you all. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks everybody. This part is kind of the relaying the state director notes. And first, before talking about our new state director, I wanted to acknowledge Gordon Toves, who was acting state director. He addressed the RAC at our last meeting, and I just want to give him credit. He stepped in as an acting, but boy, he was not just filling in. He really was engaged and got a lot done, in particular relative to Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, the expansion, co-stewardship agreements in that area. He was very engaged and supportive of all the activities going on there. So he was for our district in particular. He was engaged, went to the California Coastal National Monument, got out to see many of the field offices, and was very supportive. So I just want to acknowledge that. He's not on, but and I've told him that particularly. He was very much appreciated. And he will continue to be engaged. His new role has to do with helping implement the new public lands rule. And so there will be more engagement from Gordon moving forward. But our new state director is Joe Stout, and he's familiar to probably many of you because he was the associate state director for 7 years. And it's really good news because of his many things. Familiarity with California. He's been to all the field offices, knows many of the issues extremely well, knows the partners, knows the other agencies. And so he is truly hitting the ground running, as they say. Very supportive of the field office level activities, and just a great guy to work with. Lots of experience in BLM at multiple levels, and particularly in planning. He grew up through the agency as a NEPA planner, so very familiar with planning processes and good connections throughout the Bureau. In this interim period that he was away from BLM, he works with the Forest Service as the forest supervisor of the El Dorado National Forest. And so that experience was, I think, really good too for us because of his connections with the Forest Service. We obviously work with them quite closely, as you all know, as we have been through the RAC here recently too. So that's Joe. Yeah, and he's in place. He looks forward to addressing the RAC. I think we'll try and get him at the next meeting. And yeah, so he's in there and engaged. So a few of the notes he wanted to pass along. I would just say, statewide priorities. Some of these things are familiar, so a bit of a review. But the bill and IRA infrastructure funding, those continue. All the projects associated with that continue to be high priority. There's numerous ecosystem restoration projects, cleanup of orphaned wells in the Bakersfield area, forest treatment that are promoting ecological restoration that continues to be high priority. So those are some of the areas that are addressed by the funding, and actually in particular in Central California and the Motherlode Field Office, the Cosumnes River Preserve is doing. Amy Fesnock, the manager there, is doing a great job implementing IRA funds to do floodplain restoration, native plant, riparian area restoration work in cooperation with that partnership for the Cosumnes River Preserve, which would be another great place for the RAC to go visit because there's a lot to see there, and it's been a high priority area. So kudos to Amy and her team for doing a great job there. Briefly mentioned the public lands rule. That is that was passed or kind of finalized earlier this year. It's starting to roll out. We're starting to see more guidance on how to implement that, and one of the keystones is conservation leases. And so there's starting to be some initial discussions about how that will work. The basic idea is that a nonprofit or conservation group could look at a particular area and offer to do or work with us to do restoration, wildlife habitat conservation types of things for a duration of up to like 10 years or so. And so anyway, but those would have to be in concert with our land management plan. So anyway, we're starting to explore that. Nothing in place yet, but looking forward to tapping into that new tool for conservation. Let's see, and I think I'll address the rest. There are some other statewide priorities, but I think I'm gonna, just to keep things moving, I'm gonna pass it back to you, Philip, and I'll address the Central California priorities when we get to that part of the agenda later on. So unless there are any questions regarding Joe or the statewide activities, I'll pass it back to you, Philip, to I guess, or turn it over to Sherry for the Bishop focus.
Okay, great. Yeah. Before we get started, everybody should have on. Anyone have any questions or technical issues at this point? No. All right. Before we do,
Philip, were we going to do introductions? We've got a
Yeah.
whole room full of people here, so okay, great.
Yep. And so that's what. Yeah. So read my mind.
Okay,
Matt.
sorry.
All right. So before we get going into the briefings, just wanted to make sure that we had so our public is aware of who is on board with us. And I will ask if possible, if you're not on camera, if you come on camera to introduce yourself and your role with this meeting. So I'm just going to go down the list for this. So we'll start off with Bob Snyder. You're on mute, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Bob Schneider. I live in Davis, California, and I represent conservation organizations on the RAC.
Great. Thank you. Mary.
Good morning. I don't have any donuts here at my house, but I am happy to be here. I represent the public at large, and I reside in the Motherlode district.
Great. Chris Friedel.
Hi, I'm Chris Friedel. Excuse me. I live in Nevada City in Nevada County, and I represent environmental organizations.
Good. Chris Heavy.
Okay, again, yeah, Chris Heppy, district manager for Central California and the federal designated federal official for the RAC. It's an honor to do so.
Jeff Horn.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff Horn. I'm the field manager for the Motherlode Field Office.
Gabe Garcia.
Hey, good morning. Gabe Garcia, field manager for the Bakersfield Field Office.
Joe Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Ashley. I live in Tehachapi, California, and I represent Energy and Minerals.
Lori Collum.
There I am. Lori Collum. I am out of Tehachapi, California as well, and I represent the public at large.
Perfect. And Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Malidi Meekum. I'm a professor of biology at Columbia Northern Arizona University, and I'm an academic representative. Good morning.
Let's see, Nick Lavrov.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Lavrov, and I'm the field manager for the Ukiah, California Field Office.
Reb Monaco. Reb, I think you're still on mute.
Is that better?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Reb Monaco. I'm from San Benito County. I think I still represent the OHV community.
Correct.
And I've been associated with the RAC for many, many years, although just recently back on it last couple of years. Anyway, it's good to see everybody. I'm looking forward to our next in-person meeting. Thank you.
Shane Garside.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the assistant field manager for recreation out of the Ukiah Field Office, and I'm here to see what I can do.
Good. Zach Day, serving multiple roles today.
Hi, I'm Zach Day. I'm an archaeologist with Bakersfield, but today I am here taking notes for the RAC meeting.
And Zachary Ormsby.
I'm the Central Coast Field Office Field Manager based out of Marina Club.
Good. Okay. And then Sherry, if you and Matt, if you want to take care of who's in your office.
Why don't we go around the table, but we'll start with Sherry and go all the way back around.
Great. Sherry Licious, Field Manager, Bishop Field Office.
Neil Craig, Assistant Field Manager, Bishop Field Office.
Heather Stone, Assistant Field Manager and Supervisory Fuel Specialist, Bishop Field Office.
Philip Gross, another one of the Assistant Field Managers here in Bishop.
Jeff Kaufman, Engineering Technician.
Michael Leaders, RAC OHV Representative.
And I'm Matt Kingsley, and I'm represent elected officials, or I guess that's who I represent. Yeah.
Great. All right. And we do have one question. Jeff Strosta. Jeff, did you have a question?
Jeff?
Yeah, where's
If Philip, the other, did we catch Brinsfield?
No, he is trying to log in. Technical difficulties in Bakersfield. So.
Got it.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Okay.
Hey.
Good.
Yeah, finally got in. Sorry about that. My name is David Brinsfield. I'm the SoCal District Fire Management Officer.
Perfect. Okay, good. Looks like, and we got in the chat. Okay, good. Yep, I think that's everybody. So introductions away, good. And I think we are good to go. One last comment for the public on our agenda, and Matt, you can also talk to this as well. As we go through, after each presentation, we will have an opportunity for public comment, and then there is a general public comment scheduled at the end of the meeting at 12 o'clock. However, depending on the length, just remember we will take public comment, and we do so with if we need to, depending on how many want to comment, we will look to have a 2-minute comment period, and then we will be moving on from that. And then at the presentations for public comment, the comment that we would encourage and want to see is on the presentations that have been given. If you have a general public comment that you would like to make, that, like I said, that time you will have time for that at 12 o'clock during the public comment period. So with that, that's all I have.
So Philip, if we why don't we, at the end of every little presentation here, I'll call for public comment. And if we can get hands raised, we've got a lot of public on, and we'd like that, but we also want to make sure we can manage the meeting in a way that gets us done on time, but also gives everybody a chance to comment as they want. So why don't I, at the end of every topic, I'll just call for public comment. And if you guys can raise your hands, that'll give us an idea of how many people want to talk to each comment. And then we'll move on. And as Philip said, if you've got comments that are not on the agenda, then save those to the end, and we'll try to capture them then.
There you go. All right, Matt, it's all you.
Take it away, Sherry.
Hey.
Wow.
Hey, we'll see how we go here. Okay, we have a number of people here, and we're going to take turns doing some presentations so you don't get tired of my voice, since we're all on Zoom, and my guess is we're zoomed out a lot of times. So we'll try and mix it up for everybody. You guys have seen this slide many times. We're the Bishop Field Office, Eastern Sierra. We'd love to see you in person because, you know, we're biased. We think we have the best spot, but so next time maybe we'll get you here. Just an overview of what we talk about today. Let's do some fun facts about the field office. I'm just gonna have one slide about the wild horses. We'll talk about just recreation overall in our field office. Then we have a full presentation on the Alabama Hills and a full presentation on the bi-state sage grouse. So fun facts about our field office, we have 750,000 acres with actually 2 million acres subsurface. So a lot of that we'll talk about with CD4. So that means geothermal resources or other mineral resources. And for all of those acres, we have 25 permanent staff, which I think is amazing about what we get done with that small number of people. We really, really focus on partnerships. You can Lori, I think that's maybe yours.
Lori Collin?
Yeah.
There, it's gone.
I think it's gone now. On the right here is the logo for the field office, and this logo has been in place since before I got here, but I really like it. You know, caring for the unique message of Wild California, which we really feel like that's what we manage. And our three focuses are conservation, education, and partnerships. And, you know, really focus on partnerships. That's an important way for us to get things done with our 25 human beings to do stuff here. So we need our partners to get things done. We also have another number of really strong partnerships with our tribes. We have some MOUs in place, some co-stewardship, and for lots of years, we've been doing tribal youth programs and other things that we work together to do stewardship on the ground. I'm going to turn it over to Neil now.
Good morning again, everyone, and we continue the fun facts here. And so it's almost impossible to capture everything we have going on here in just a few slides. And so we just wanted to kind of post up a few highlights here. And our cattle and sheep allotments is what you're kind of seeing there. So we work well with the Forest Service and our LEDWP partners to kind of make sure those are all coordinated well with our range specialist on our parties, and we have good relationships with those folks. I'm going to skip down to kind of the fire stations, 2 interagency fire stations, one in Mono, one in Topaz. See kind of replacement sign there for Topaz, which is excellent. And just really good partnership with the interagency fire here. We're actually in the building with the Forest Service, and so we have really good coordination and partnership with our Forest Service. And I'll even add another trivia fun fact into the fun facts, because everyone, since you're not here, should be transported to the Eastern Sierra. And so we'll take everybody back to 1990, and just to get your mindset, that was the biggest year of cassette sales. So you can go back to cassettes there. And if you recall, Reba McEntire and Kevin Bacon teamed up to battle the sandworms in Alabama Hills, which came out as a movie called Tremors. And so the boulders and geology of Alabama Hills saved many people in that movie. So,
and you can still see a lot of the movie, sets and stuff in Lone Pine and at the Film History Museum.
Yep. And Sherry will be going over some of that a little bit later. But
Okay, great.
I thought that that was some fun knowledge to.
That was cassettes.
Yeah, that was movie for cassettes. And so that kind of takes us to the geothermal plant, Casa Diablo. Owens Valley has a couple of fault zones, and so we have a lot of geothermal activity here. And the CD4 plant just came online last couple of years and is producing about 30 megawatts, which doubled their power output, and is on leased Forest Service land. BLM doing the basically the oversight of that plant, as BLM does all over the U.S. for anything underground. And it produces approximately enough power for 25,000 homes. And some of that power is sold locally, which is pretty cool. And that gets into a lot of other things, the right-of-ways, the unique plants and animals, everything from pygmy rabbits to data collection with seismographs and working with researchers such as universities for plants and animals all across the field office. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Sherry.
Excellent. And I think I also just wanted to mention, since you guys aren't here, I put right-of-ways on there because another major partner we work with is Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And they are the primary landowner of anything that has water here in the Eastern Sierra. So they have to be at the table whenever we're having conversations to get things done. And they have a number of rights away on BLM lands to spread water and to move water throughout the Eastern Sierra and for power. So I think that's really important. And then I also just want to mention, this is a place that is very rich in archaeological history. And of course, we still have tribes living here today and connected with those landscapes. And so I think it's just important to note that we have a couple of petroglyph sites that are, public and people can go to them. So I think it's just important to share that. We're going to actually then jump over to the wild horses because we're just really given the basics of the Bishop Field Office here. And this has come up on every slide we've had, for the last, I think, since you guys restarted, we've mentioned, hey, this is going to come up. And one of the former RAC members really wanted us to talk about this. And so, which was great. Part of Warren's encouragement was for us to do something about the wild horses. And just to clarify, there's a Montgomery Pass wild horse territory. The territory includes lands that are the Bishop BLM and the Inyo National Forest, the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest, and the Carson BLM in Nevada. But the Inyo National Forest is the lead of this territory, not the BLM. And so, it's really, they are to be the ones that take control of sort of what needs to happen out there in partnership with the rest of us. But we really felt something needed to happen. And so the BLM went ahead and took the lead on the Gather NEPA. And so there's an EA out right now for the objection period for the Forest Service that discusses options to gather horses outside of the territory only. We are not talking about the territory. We're not making any changes to the territory. The goal is to gather the horses outside of the territory and take them to corrals for adoption. And so I think it's been taken an enormous amount of work for the staff here this year, but it's incredibly important. You can see these pictures of the horses both at Mono Lake and on the highway, which is probably Highway 120 there. And so we have safety concerns, we have impacts to the tufa, impacts to sage grouse habitat. And again, these are all in places where horses are not intended to be. Horses really are intended to be managed inside their territory. And then we'll be working with the Forest Service on a plan for the territory once this Gather EA is done. So again, the draft EA is out right now with a final decision, the final EA is out right now and a draft decision and FONSI is out for the Forest Service. Once their objection period is over, then we will each sign the decision at the same time. Mm. It's a little complicated.
Yeah.
With two agencies, but it can be done. And I think it's really important to do it together because the horses it's a shared responsibility.
Will BLM actually do the gather?
No, thank you for letting me say that. The Forest Service is going to do the gather because they are the lead. So these will go to Forest Service corrals. They're funding it. And so that's how that will work.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Philip, who is going to talk about recreation.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Philip Gross here. I supervise recreation here out of the Bishop Field Office. So the eastern side of the Sierra is oftentimes known as California's outdoor playground. And some of the reasons for that is the percentage of public lands on the eastern side of the Sierra, as well as the type of recreation available. There's quite a bit of opportunity, for outdoor recreation. And as Neil mentioned, the geologic activity on the eastern side of the Sierra also allows for the public to recreate in hot springs that are strewn up and down the Owens Valley. These are undeveloped hot springs, but the public really enjoy this. We also have two designated wilderness areas, Granite Mountain Wilderness and Inyo Mountain Wilderness. So great opportunities for backpacking and camping and finding solitude. We have 14 wilderness study areas, which are managed in a very similar way as designated wilderness. Over 10 areas of critical environmental concern, which are also uniquely designated areas. Over 2,000 miles of road, which gives you great opportunity for OHV and mountain biking and gravel bike riding. 5 developed campgrounds up and down the Owens Valley. They are heavily frequented, almost always full, especially in the spring and the fall. And then world-class rock climbing. So around the world, the eastern side of the Sierra, and specifically the Bishop area, is known for some of the most famous bouldering that you can find. And so we are going into the busy rock climbing and bouldering season right now as temperatures cool off.
So actually that comes to the end of just the overview of the Bishop Field Office. We just kind of wanted to give you a smattering, since you're not here, of some of the great things that happen in our field office. And I just really appreciate this opportunity because we could talk all day about what I think we have going on in the field office, which is pretty fun. But that's all we have for that part. So I don't know if you want to pause now or you want me to go into the hills, because
we'll go ahead and do the next section here and then take public comment. We can take public comment back on this if there's something too, but let's go ahead and continue.
That sounds good. So we're going to transition now to the Alabama Hills. And again, this is something that the RAC has seen on every presentation that we've done, but now we get to take a deeper dive. Many of you have been involved in our planning process prior to this, but I just want to make sure that everyone gets all the details. This is a presentation that is based on one that we did a couple of years ago with the Alabama Hills Stewardship Group, and our contractors made this just great graphic and PowerPoint to kind of showcase some of our work. So I just think it's also really a fun PowerPoint presentation. So we'll get into talk about the history of the hills, the management plan, how implementation is going, and the next steps and lessons learned. Okay, so I think everyone here knows this, but we're going to point this out. The Alabama Hills are in the southern part of the Eastern Sierra near the town of Lone Pine. The National Scenic Area is about 18,745 acres, while the Special Recreation Management Area is a little over 10,000 acres. And the scenic area is the part of the map without, let me show that, without the stripes on there. And the SRMA is the part with the stripes on there. So I think it's just important, as you know, because we're talking about designations all over the place and new management plans. So I think it's important to look at the history. Actually give a whole presentation on the history that was an hour long, because there's so many interesting things that happened there. I'm going to start in 1969, but I actually could have started much earlier than that. People have identified the Alabama Hills as an important place for a very long time. It is a really interesting and unique location. But back in 1969, the BLM designated it as Alabama Hills Recreation Lands. And that sign that you see in this photo was from 1969. And we still have it up. We refresh it. It's at our entrance station. It's really a nice vision of kind of the past and bringing it into the future. In the 1980s, this Alabama Hills SRMA was designated, and that encompassed about 30,000 acres. And what is now the National Scenic Area would be within that boundary. In 1993, we did our Bishop Resource Management Plan, which provided some guidance for the Alabama Hills. In approximately 2006, the Alabama Hills Stewardship Group formed, and they were really instrumental in the conservation of this area and taking care of the place and moving this into a designation. It was really a grassroots effort to move this area into a designation. And they considered a lot of different things when they decided what should be the designation. And then in 2016, it sounds like a lot of different things, but they all played in. We had the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. And that sounds like, what would that have to do with the Alabama Hills? But it was an opportunity for us to put some guidance in, basically do a land management plan amendment and do some guidance for the hills. And in that plan, we noted that this area could become a scenic area. And so if so, we would develop a plan. And so really set the stage for us being able to just go straight into an implementation plan instead of having to do an RMP, a resource management plan amendment because we already had the direction that this could become a scenic area or some other designation. And so we could go ahead and write an implementation level plan. In 2019, the area was designated as a national scenic area. It's the only national scenic area managed by the BLM and one of 10 in the country. And then in 2021, we wrote the management plan. You know, and actually I was looking at my notes here and I always just want to note, I'm going to clean this up here. Sorry, I got way too many, the windows. Let's see if I can move this stuff. You guys can't see what I'm doing here, but all right. Well, what I will mention, and I usually try and get the words exactly right, but that the indigenous people of the area feel that this is an important place, and it has been an important place historically, and they still have connections to it today. And I just think that's also an important note here, and they are involved in this plan and have been involved in the implementation. So I just want to make sure that we note that. So then why did we rush to write a management plan? I think a lot of people know that designations happen, and not always does a management plan happen so quickly. 2 years after the designation, you know, the Dingle Act, which designated the area, did say we were supposed to write the plan in 3 years, but I think everyone knows, like, sometimes that just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of effort and funding and commitment to write a management plan, but we knew it needed to happen. We've been seeing an increase in visitation. Our RMP suggested we should do one. The DRECP suggested we should do one. It is required by our policy. And the goal of the plan was to develop specific strategies and actions to provide for the long-term conservation, protection, and enhancement of the Alabama Hills. And so I'm going to show this just about some data, why a management plan. Because, you know, even though it was designated in 2019, we've been really focusing a lot of effort there. You know, I know we have Dave Kirk on here, and he was a former BLM employee, and you know, he'd been out there year after year after year monitoring this place and watching the visitation increase and really seeing some of the damage that we were having to deal with, and we just didn't have the resources to deal with it. So you can see how visitation changed. I think you have to note, I have the chart on here. Sometimes the data, we don't have a lot of years. So in 2008, we only had 106 days of data. And so they do this, the traffic counter program does all this crazy complicated math, but they do some average number of cars and multiply it by the number 365 days. And so I'd say some of the data is less great than others, but you can still just really see the trend over time, really, really increasing since really, if you looked at 2009, where we had a pretty good year of data, all the way to 2019, where we wrote the plan, we're seeing almost double. And this is the number of cars. And so if you're looking at 2.5 people per car, 2 to 2.5 people per car, we're looking at, you know, a couple 100,000 people a year by, or more by 2021. I think it's important to note that 2021 had a giant spike because of COVID. I think 2020 was a little low because of that was the initial COVID piece. And then we actually started seeing a drop in 2022. I think there was a huge spike in recreation across the country from COVID. And then we started seeing it back to kind of normal levels in 2022 and 2023. But I will have to note, I don't even know if that's going to be like a good real number, because during that time, we also had the biggest storms in California history, really, or nearly, which meant that the access for Whitney Portal Road, Movie Road, the primary road in the Alabama Hills, both of those were closed for quite a while during these time periods. And actually Whitney Portal Road, it still remains closed right now. So if you look at that visitation, that's still quite high if you realize how hard it is to get there now. So we'll see what happens once that road opens. So when we developed this plan, I think it's just really important to note that we really focused on visitors and stakeholders. We did not want to write this plan in a vacuum. We really wanted input from a lot of different people. So back in March of 2019, right as the designation came in, we had already been planning a workshop. We just knew we needed to do something. So we had a workshop in Lone Pine to get people involved, to listen to people. In November of 2019, we were out in the hills and we did pop-up workshops where we asked people questions. We had public meetings in 2019. I mean, we really tried to get information from folks. Then, of course, we started moving into COVID. So we had a lot of virtual meetings. This is me out actually with my mask on, talking to people when we were still thinking we had to mask up outside. And so we just pushed it. We wanted to hear from the public. So we had all these sticky notes. What do you like to do here? What are your concerns? We just really felt like it was important to get the public involved. I'm going to mention just a bit here. This gets into the implementation a little bit. We also felt like it was important to educate people after the plan was established. And so we did a number of Hills happenings, which were virtual meetings to let people know what was going on. Because again, we were still kind of more in a virtual setting at that point because of COVID, but really just letting them know how implementation was going, keeping on that communication going. The Dingle Act also said that we needed to consult and coordinate with a number of parties. And so we had a number of partners that are listed here that we worked with. Matt's here from Inyo County. We work closely with them, the Lone Pine Tribe, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, as mentioned earlier. And all of those nonprofits really helped us to get the plan into a good shape and also implemented. I'm not going to read all this, but I think it just can't understate the role of the stewardship group in the establishment of the Alabama Hills National Scenic Area. Again, it was just a grassroots effort to get this established, and they really participated in the management plan, and we did implementation, we did volunteer days. So I think it's just important, and this slideshow will be part of the record so you guys can read this more thoroughly. But their vision, this was quite at the beginning for them that they had this vision, and it was really a wonderful way to start thinking about how to look at the Alabama Hills. So what do we need to do in the scenic area per the Dingle Act? We need to focus on these nationally significant items. And again, I'm not going to read the laundry list, but the highlights are probably the scenic, the cultural, the geological, recreational. I think it's really important to note that recreation is one of the things they talk about objects and values in these conservation lands, and recreation was one of our objects and values, and it's for the current and future generations' benefit. So what's in this new management plan? Everything's in there. We did not write a recreation specific management plan. We wanted to use this as an opportunity to do a bunch of different stuff. And so that's what we did. We included tons of stuff in there, and that made it more complicated, but it has really opened up some doors because we have NEPA for work that we want to keep doing. And so we're ready to implement. It's great. Okay, so camping. Even though this is not a recreation specific plan, this was the primary focus. This was where we were seeing most of the impacts. This is where we were getting most of the complaints. There were just people camped everywhere. We were seeing human waste that you just kind of wouldn't believe, in a lot. Every corner you went around where there was a dispersed site, there was just, in every rock and crevice, there were human waste piles. And so it was time to do something. It really needed to happen. So in the plan, we had a number of alternatives, one of which was to have no dispersed camping in the hills. One was to have sort of some number of them that would be designated, and then one was to just leave it, of course, as is. And we went with the middle ground there based on just our environmental analysis. So we have designated dispersed campsites. Again, there'll be a link to this. I'm going to see if it'll let me do this. We'll see if it'll let me go to here. So if you go to our website, you can actually go to a camping map and take a look at what is the camping map for the Alabama Hills. And
showing the screen.
no, it's not showing that. Huh. Well, I think it doesn't want to do that part of it. You guys are gonna have to go with this map. With technology, it just doesn't want to go there. When you have this, you'll have a link to this, but essentially we went from approximately 126 dispersed campsites, and we now have about 52 out there. And they are all now marked with these signs that you see on here. Starting this fall, the free permits will be required. All the permits do is just say that you know the rules. They don't give you a campsite. It isn't a reservation. It just gives people like a chance to plan ahead and prepare and know where the campsites are. This is an Avenza map, so I don't know if any of you have used that app, but it's a great app. And so this will actually help you. You can use this map to navigate to the sites that are out there. So I think we're trying to make it easy for folks to find these sites. And so I think that was really the biggest piece of work that we had in the hills.
How will they get the permits?
They can get the permits in the hills, like paper. They can get the permits online on the ECO website. And they can also get them if the park ranger talks to them and they don't have one. We're just going to give them to them.
Okay.
This isn't a enforcement. We're mad at you. This is you need to know what to do before you come here. You know, the longer it goes along, it may become, you should have known better. But right now it's an educational permit. It's just if you have this permit, that means you know what to do with your human waste. You know that you have to be in a designated site. It provides a link to the map. So I think the goal right now is really education. And we will just make sure everyone has one. They last for a year. They're just like the California campfire permit, right?
Oh, so it's not a daily or anything.
Nope, it's just
okay.
you need to have a permit so
Okay.
that we can check off that you know how to take care of the Alabama Hills.
Okay.
Yeah. So this to me, I got to participate in a lot of this piece. It was crazy to get rid of all those dispersed campsites. 150 fire rings, and that's probably a low end. I mean, my guess is that was after the first round of them. So lots and lots and lots of fire rings removed, restoration. And this is just a group of people removing one of the fire rings and what it took for just one fire ring. So you can truly imagine what it was like to do this. And we had a really diverse group of partners that helped us out there, and that made a big difference because we couldn't have done it alone. And so it looks great out there. I will say we get a lot of compliments. People are very happy that there's less human waste, that you can see the Sierra without a lot of people camping out. We tried to make the campsites in places that were less visible. There are always going to be challenges and we're working through them as they come. You know, people wish there were more. People come in at night and they can't find them. So there are some challenges. But we also just get a lot of people who seem very happy about it. So along with that, of course, that meant that more people are going to be using our campgrounds. So this is our Tuttle Creek campground, which is inside of the scenic area. And it is not right in the middle of the movie road area, so it's less popular. But what we can see is kind of right around the management plan in 2021, we started to see that increase in use in the campground. And that's what we were hoping for. The campground was actually not getting used enough. We were not getting full occupancy. And I would say still to date, we get full occupancy on busy weekends in the spring and fall. And like right now, there's like 3 people there, you know, so I think it just depends on, you know, the time of year, but spring and fall, it's quite busy. The management plan does have some actions that we could expand the campground or develop another one if we're not meeting the needs of the public. Special recreation permits and filming, like Neil said, over 400 films have been filmed in the Alabama Hills. Lots of car commercials. Matthew McConaughey had a commercial out recently. Iron Man was filmed there. So a lot of people come out and take their picture where these things were filmed. And that was one of the other reasons we changed the camping, is that people were trying to take their picture at Iron Man and there'd be a group of 10 people camped there. And so they couldn't do that. So we really tried to focus camping where we weren't going to have those conflicts. But filming is in the orange here on this, the darker orange. And so, we averaged about 20 permits a year, and then we're starting to see an increase in that. So, continue to see an increase in interest in filming. And then we also are seeing an increase in our interest in special recreation permits. So that is everything from running a race to the concert in the rocks to the film festival that's coming up in October. But we're really starting to see an increase there. And we also determined that you need to have a permit for drones just inside the scenic area. And so this last year we did 11 permits for drones as well. And the goal of that is, again, we heard from many people that they didn't like having the drones. So we wanted to kind of manage it more. In the plan is also a great amount of education. So our partner at Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association, Death Valley National Park, and the Stewardship Group all help us with education. And since 2022, we've done at least 75 programs in the hills, which is incredible. Lots of pop-up tables and just general geology talks, and also night sky talks. We did a visual resource inventory. This was also in the management plan, is that we wanted to really determine, what's the most important scenery to take care of while we were out there, since it's the only scenic area. It's hard to tell what this is, but the bright orange is the most scenic corridor. And as you move out, it's a little less scenic. And so it kind of just gives us some data to support, some of the actions that go on out there. Lots of biological resources in the management plan as well, including weed treatments, restoration, pinion treatments, riparian treatments, and fuels treatments. And in fuels treatments, since the plan was signed, we treated 142 acres. Much of that is in the WUI at the Granite View community and also along Hogback Creek. We have geologic resources, of course, that's what the Alabama Hills is known for. But because of that, there's been a lot of mining there. So the Dingle Act actually did a mineral withdrawal. And then there are these abandoned mine lands, which are basically holes in the ground, which is the picture on the right-hand side, which are left from mining. And they're great habitat for bats, but they're very dangerous for humans. So some of the plans some of the items in the action plan were to go ahead and close those or make them continue to be a bat habitat, but safer for humans by putting those gates in. So we started that work last fall. There's also recreational mining in the plan. Again, this plan had it a little bit for everybody. And so we worked with the Lone Pine Gem and Mineral group, and we developed this sign with them so that recreational mining, casual mining could continue just in this one location where they wanted to keep it active. I just want to mention these two other things just to say, again, comprehensive plan. We continue to have livestock grazing in the Alabama Hills. They don't really spend any time in movie flat because I think that'd be hard for the cows. But we just want to make sure we continue to monitor rangeland health. And then lands and realty is really important, which again, the rights of way, sometimes I think people don't think about this as public land management, but Los Angeles Department of Water and Power have a number of rights of way in the scenic area, and they can maintain those. And that was an important part of the Dingle Act. There is this energy corridor that is in the Alabama Hills from an older NEPA document. And so we kind of talked about what we thought should happen there. And there's currently a NEPA document out right now, an EIS, where they're updating that. So there may be some options to discuss that. And finally, cultural and historic resources were in the plan. And a lot of those are actually film sites. The thing up at the top there is part of an old film. So there's a lot of cultural and historic resources related to filming that we want to interpret and really acknowledge, but also to just make sure we work with the tribe to eliminate impacts to any cultural resources as well. So what's next on our schedule here? Free camping permits, I mentioned this fall, we're going to see those as required. Right now we have these porta potties out there. They're not that attractive. So we're going to put some great restroom, we're not going to put actual restrooms in. We're going to put some kind of attractive screens around the restrooms. And part of that is just having people to clean the restrooms, right? So it's nice to have a company that will come and do that instead of having our staff have to do that because we just don't always have the people. We want to get our permanent interpretive signs out. We finally have made the final changes to some of the signs, so hopefully that will be coming soon. We'll keep doing the fuels and wildlife projects. We have to finish up those bat gates, and the fuels projects are really ongoing. And I think a big, I think it sounds like, oh, we did all the work and it's done, but every single day, in the fall and the spring particularly, we have people going out to make sure people are camping where they're supposed to camp. They're educating people. They're restoring areas where people did things they weren't supposed to do. So it's just an ongoing workload. So I asked some of the folks here about the top challenges. It turns out human waste remains a challenge for us. We have 6 porta potties out there. That it's just a challenge. Like when you have a lot of humans concentrated, it's going to continue to be a challenge. And so, how do we get people to use the restroom, to use wag bags? It's just hasn't been that part still remains difficult in some of the sites. Visitation on busy weekends, it's the camping really. So most of the time camping, it's kind of people know where they're supposed to go, but I camped there, on Memorial Day weekend, and there were people in lots of places they weren't supposed to be, including on lands of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, where they are not allowed to camp at all. So we're working closely with LADWP, talking to them about potentially having them help us fund a position that somebody could do a little bit of work on their lands, and really get the no camping signs out. And I think it's just it comes down to continued education for folks, making sure they know where they can and can't camp when they come in at night on a Friday on a holiday weekend. Climate change, this really to me is about the roads. Last year with all of the storms, as we continue to see bigger storms over the years, we're seeing roads wash out, and that we're just going to have this kind of erratic, like, oh my gosh, now we got to repair this road and repair this road. And the county is primarily the one doing movie road, but the small roads we need to do, we don't really have a roads crew here. We have a couple folks who have great skills who can help us with that. But I think it's going to continue to be a challenge. We want to keep Movie Road open and Whitney Portal Road open, but the big storms are going to be hard on us. Staffing is always going to be a problem. We need to make sure that we have the resources to do this. And so, we do what we can with what the funding we have. And I think we are spreading that out in as many ways as we possibly can. We have Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association. We fund them to have a person down there. And then we have our staff going to a lot of our staff going down, but there's just 750,000 acres and a limited amount of time. So I think that's always going to be a challenge. And this is, 30,000 of the 750. So I think the focus is really important for us down there since it is the only scenic area. But I will say that, we can only be there so much. And then I always like to end my talks with Fred Rogers' quote, which is, I hope you're proud of yourself for the times you said yes when all it meant was extra work for you and was seemingly helpful only to someone else. And to me, that's a great quote about just public lands and civil servants and people really wanting to take care of these beautiful places that we manage. And this is, to me, how we try and work in our field office. So I think that's just a nice goal to get to. And I think that's all I have there. We could go to some.
Why don't we open it up to RAC member comments?
Great.
And then we'll see if there's public.
Sounds good.
Hey, everybody, I have a couple of questions from Nancy in the chat. Do we have an estimate for opening Whitney Portal Road?
Oh, thanks, Nancy. Matt, do you want to give that?
Well, at this point for the last year, I've just always said, yeah, tomorrow, which is never true. But it's being worked on. The contractor's there. They're saying that it'll be open, you know, all they'll say right now is by the end of the year. I think it'll be sooner. They're rushing to try and get it in shape quick enough so that it can get paved in this paving season still. And that'll be that could be a question mark whether they'll have that ready or not. But yeah, it's been a real trial for residents and visitors alike.
Yeah, I will say that actually the road closure that actually has led to some of our challenges because we hadn't signed that area very heavily. It's a place that people weren't driving past very often. And so this year we've ordered a number of signs so that we can actually start really educating hard about dispersed camping on that side. Because it really,
the Tuttle Creek side.
On the Tuttle Creek side, yeah, which is part of the area that just wasn't as used. But now that everyone has to pass by there, we're getting a little more campers in the campground, but we're also getting more dispersed campsites over there.
Great. Next one, also from Nancy, on the dispersed camping permits that are coming, will folks be able to get those online prior to arrival?
Yes, absolutely. They are on the Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association's website. And again, we'll have a press release out about this. It's in progress right now. But yes, they will get them online in advance if they would like to, and so they can have it on their phone, or they could get them when they get there.
Yeah, and I'll echo that.
Our preference, of course, is in advance because the goal is to encourage. The press release will really focus on the leave no trace principle of plan ahead and prepare, because that's really what needs to happen for us to be successful.
But just to clarify that doesn't guarantee them a campsite. This is a yearly permit.
That's right.
And so there still could be no campsites or very limited campsites in the Alabama Hills.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're not to the point where we're actually issuing permit daily or.
Oh my gosh, no, and we just don't have, I mean, that would be taking quite a permit system, I think. So no, it doesn't give you a campsite. All it does is educate you that this doesn't guarantee you a campsite. Here are the campsites you can. Here's a link to all the website, all the other campgrounds in the area. So it just kind of tells you what you need to know. Where do you do your human waste, campfires, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Looks like Mary's got a question.
Yeah, well, hang on, one more, and then.
Oh, sorry.
And then just to end with that, with Nancy, she's like, when's it coming? As Sherry mentioned, we have the news release in the works. We're hopeful that here early fall, we'll be able to launch that, and a lot of it will be education first, and then just make sure we get the word out and get these available to everybody. So, yeah. All right, let's go. Hands up. Mary, you're up first.
Yes, thank you. Lovely presentation. While you were presenting, I did a quick Google and I found an ArcGIS story map with the most amazing destruction photos of what took place during those rains. And I can put the link in the chat. It's quite astounding. So good job dealing with that. Also, I have been reading about what's going on at Joshua Tree with a preventive search and rescue effort. And this, obviously Joshua Tree, it gets very hot. So the search and rescue, which I believe is county coordinated, not BLM coordinated, is doing more preventive effort as opposed to waiting for someone to get lost. So I wondered if you were coordinating or thinking about that.
Thank you, Mary. We're lucky to who we have in the room here. So I would say, I will say, unless Michael, you have different information, we don't really get much of that in the Alabama Hills. It's not because it's closer to town, but I would compared to like High Sierra, right?
Just up the road.
Yeah, right. But Michael here is part of the Inyo Search and Rescue. So I will actually turn it to him.
Yes, so what you're referring to, the Preventative Search and Rescue, is known as PSAR. Inyo County Search and Rescue does have a PSAR division, and they are very active in the Whitney portal and any other climbing or recreational centric gatherings. Climbers and coffee events and all these other things, they have a presence there. And uniforms, everything, and they do checks of people's equipment and informational stuff. We do have one member that visits climbing gyms in Southern California, and we've approached climbing gyms in the Bay Area to address the climbers that are preparing to come here. We do have the metrics and demographics of the users and where they're coming from nationally. So we're looking at reaching out on a national level with the climbing organizations and other recreational organizations to give them the information they need to properly prepare for their visit here, so they have a happy, pleasant, and great memory, and they come back again. So it does work. The system does work, and most of the search and rescue organizations that have a high impact area, like Joshua Tree, or here we have Whitney Portal and Whitney, that there are efforts to make sure that public is educated. It's way easier to educate 10 people than rescue 3. So we try.
Great. Thanks for that answer.
Okay, and next up we have Bob Snyder.
Hi, thank you, and thank you for that presentation and all the hard work people have done with the restoration work in developing the management plan. And I've taken trips down there twice a year, probably one in the spring and one in the fall for probably the last 8 or 10 years. And I've loved the improvements that have happened. I think particularly along Movie Road, not having any camping to the west of the road has been incredibly helpful. And I feel guilty a little bit because before the management plan a while ago, in my youth, we used to camp. That's where all the climbers came. But now we all go to Tuttle Creek Campground because it has tables and restrooms. And that campground is pretty exceptional, I think, and so job well done on that also. And I think that the Bishop office is the embodiment of that Fred Rogers quote that you mentioned. I do have one question. I'm wondering what the appeal was on the management plan.
The appeal was there were so many challenges, like even before the designation. So I started my job as the assistant field manager in recreation right around 2018, I think. And there were so many challenges even then that we couldn't deal with, that we needed to do something. So I think that was the appeal of it, was that it solved problems. Like it was timely even without the scenic area designation. It needed to happen. Because I think, the staff that we're having to go down there, and Dave's on the call here, every single day would come back and go, oh my gosh, there were 16 new campsites. There's human waste all over the place. Yeah.
But what I meant was that you said the actual management plan,
yeah,
when it was adopted, got appealed.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant appealed. It did get appealed. Thank you for letting me know that, or mentioning that. So it was appealed. So the appeal was about the camping. And so it is not resolved yet. So the appeal is pending. But we weren't stayed. And so when we get appealed, the judges determine if that we're going to be stayed where we cannot do the work, or if we can go ahead and do the work and let the appeal play out in the background. And that's what they determined, is that we could go forth and go ahead and implement as things wait in the background. So it's still actually pending. It's still on the IBLA list of appeals. So we don't have a resolution from that, but it was primarily focused on the camping.
You might, I don't, maybe you already have, I'm thinking that then having a sheet, with 2 or 3, 4 questions that people could fill out about how they feel about the camping and the way it is now. I think you get a pretty positive response, and that might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's probably a good idea because, I don't know how long it'll take for them. The IBLA is a little backed up right now. So I don't know how long that'll take, but it'd be nice to have the data. And we have a lot of anecdotal data, but it would be nice to get some actual real data. So yeah, thanks.
You can put me down as part of the anecdotal data.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Chris Friedel.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Great presentation. I haven't been down there in many, many years, and it makes me excited to come and visit again. I have a question about the camping designations and enforcement. I know you talked a little bit about it, but there's going to be signs directing people and a Avenza map. And you also mentioned there were some staff that were visiting, and I just want to know more details about like how many people are dedicated to enforcement. How often is somebody going to be down there? And also can they issue citations, or like what's the response to people who are not following the rules?
Yeah. So it's now been a couple years that we've had the designated sites in. So we have our goal was to educate and not enforce unless they were doing something pretty obnoxious, because it is a huge change. Having worked in Yosemite when they closed a bunch of campgrounds, I mean, people were still coming down going, why can't I camp in Yellow Pines or something? I think it takes a long time for a big change like this to happen. So first, I would say we were just focusing on education. And as far as what that looked like, lots of webinars, online changes to the website, partners changes to the website. And then as far as people coming, who we have patrolling, we have funded Eastern Sierra Interpreters Association for a full-time person. So they go in during the busy season, they go every day of their work week. And then our staff supplements that as well. And so our goal doesn't always happen. Our goal is 7 days a week coverage. So somebody is there every single day, sometimes more than one person. So again, that is the goal. And, as long as we can have the funding to do so, that is what we're going to do, because it makes a huge difference, right? Because we don't have an entrance station, it makes it hard. So we also have, we have sandwich board signs. So then when you first come into Movie Road, that these folks put out at the end of their day that says designated sites full, go to the campground. So we're trying a bunch of different stuff like that to let people know, hey, you're not going to find a site, so don't drive around all night, because we were seeing a lot of impacts from that. We have 2 law enforcement rangers for the 750,000 acres. But one of them in the fall and spring tend to be focused in the Alabama Hills. And so there have been occasional tickets. Our last law enforcement ranger really liked to just make people do restoration. Like if they drove someplace they shouldn't, he would hand them a rake. And so, I think there's different solutions there, obviously dependent on if the person was clearly just not doing what they shouldn't do and they were obstinate about it, or they came in at night and they couldn't see. So we're working on some things to make it better for people who come in at night, but people are just going to have to do some plan ahead and prepare. Like, it's just like we all know, like anytime you arrive at night, it's better to just go to a campground, right? Like you just disperse camping in the middle of the night is not very straightforward. So I think we have a lot, we're trying to do, we always talk about first you do engineering and education. So we have rocks out where people shouldn't go. We have signs where you can camp, signs where you can't camp. And then at the end, we do enforcement, and just the law enforcement rangers can write tickets. Nobody else can. Everyone else is just doing nice education saying, hey, did you know you're camped next to a sign that says no camping? Here's some places you could camp. These folks, the folks that are out there educated and all have, the maps that they can give people and say, hey, here's the places you could camp. Here's where all the other campgrounds in the area are. If you really want to disperse camp, there's, 720,000 other acres that you could move to. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, back to Bob.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple of comments. I really appreciated the group vision that was developed, and I'm working on some other projects right now where I think that approach is really a good idea. So thanks for that. And the other thing I wanted to say is in the management plan. In fact, one of the management plans we're working on is the Berryessa Mountain National Monument Plan. Is include a lot of stuff. It gets into the NEPA. And then it becomes part of the implementation of the plan. So the plan's not just something that sits on the shelf. It's an action plan that helps move forward the vision of the group that they put together. So thank you for that also in that approach. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. If there's no more hands, can you go to the listings? We can just see him. Okay. And why don't we ask for public comment? If anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. We'll check here for a second more. Is there one?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Amy Grant. Okay, go ahead.
There you go. Okay.
Hi, good morning, everyone. A couple of things. First, I want to thank Michael Leaders for attending my webinar yesterday. And excuse me, hopefully he'll pass along the information, what we're trying to do with Conservation Lands Foundation. But we need to differentiate in management plans on when we say there are 2,000 miles of road, it does not necessarily include access for off-road vehicles. Street legal vehicles can be considered OHV when they're on a dirt road or trail, but non-street legal vehicles have very specific prohibitions on where they can and can't go. With a 230% increase in the sales of side-by-sides in California between 2021 and 2023, we have to make sure that we have access for non-street legal vehicles. So we need to separate that out to understand exactly where people with side-by-sides, dirt bikes, ATVs can go and where they can't go, because it was not clear in the presentation how the plans are actually catering to the off-road community, which is the non-street legal green sticker community. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that comment. Let's make sure we capture everybody's comment, and then we'll let Sherry answer back on any of these that she has a response to. Is there any more?
We do have one from the chat. It says there was a brief point during the presentation on current mining in the Sierras. However, many locals have an issue with the mining permitting in BLM land, affecting neighborhood environmental health. How much public comment is needed to urge BLM to deny permits?
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. That came from the public side. Right, okay.
Yeah.
And if there is no more, why don't we end public comment on this topic, and we'll let Sherry just address those two issues.
Sure. So for the OHV, just to clarify, Amy, the 2,000 miles in our entire field office across the 750,000 acres. And so those roads do have, what kinds of vehicles can drive on them. And then in the Alabama Hills, I did not speak directly to OHV. I think there's 130 miles. I'm just guessing on that in the entire area. And in the plan, we did have how many were open to, motorcycles versus, OHVs versus all the different categories. And so we did do that in there. We did not make a lot of changes to that. This area is really just known as an area for people just driving in their Jeep on dirt roads a lot of times. There's not a ton of OHV use down there. That's my sense, Matt. You've lived down there, so that's maybe more for you. There are times where people are on Movie Road going pretty fast in their razors, but that the illegal use is hard for us to manage. But I think it's not a hotspot because there aren't a lot of good loops for people down there. I don't think, not in that core area. There's too many other visitors, or either of you, because you're both in that community.
Well, I know the backcountry discovery route for adventure motorcycles, being plated motorcycles though, but they're dual sports, they go through there. There are a lot of plated vehicles that go into there. As far as the green sticker and everything else, there's a few single tracks and there's a few smaller areas, but it didn't seem like it was a hub for hardcore off-roaders to begin with. Unlike Polita or other areas in the tablelands that are more focused to that type of recreation, that it was more of a camping destination, and then they would spur out from there. They would go to like the reward mine or elsewhere from there. So I think those users, the green sticker users, are now they're camping and they're trailering, or they're going to a site where they can get across 395 is more of what I see. So
yeah, but I appreciate that. It's an important thing for us to make sure we know, where people can and can't go, and provide the opportunities for a lot of different users. Including equestrians and others, and that was in the plan.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about that plan is that it does call out so many different users, and that's one of the things that's kept it supported locally.
Yeah. And then I think on the mining, we don't have any current mining proposals here for the Bishop BLM, and so in my tenure here, I've been here for 13 years and I haven't worked on a mining project. So I don't have a lot of information on that. I think that the 1872 mining law has some requirements that agencies need to follow. And that is kind of about what we need to respond and follow the law. So I think always commenting on any NEPA document is the way to go. But I think that's about all I can say, is make sure you have good substantive comments, and that's the way for us to make changes into our NEPA document.
I think one thing to note is that there is some fairly controversial mining going on just on the outside of the Bishop Field office. And so it is confusing sometimes about which field office is handling that. And in Conglomerate Mesa in particular is out of the Ridgecrest field office. And so in case that's the question, that just to note that. Okay, so
Do you want to take a break at all?
Yeah, we're doing good. Why don't we go ahead? We're scheduled for a break at 10 o'clock
not till
10:45.
10:45. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's keep going.
Okay.
We'll do the bi-state sage grouse update.
Okay, I'm gonna have Heather Stone actually give this presentation. So get it started and have her. Heather, do you want me to just do this, or do you want to sit here? What works?
I'll sit there if you want to just start the presentation and make sure it's on the screen. Okay.
Oh wait, I'm not sharing, I don't think. Okay.
Hey, hello everyone. This is Heather Stone. I introduced myself earlier. I'm one of the assistant field managers in the office. And I'm going to address the bi-state sage grouse action plan update that we have been working with partners on for the last 2 years. And since I'm following Sherry's presentation about the Alabama Hills Management Plan, I want to start by saying this is not that kind of plan. this is a roadmap for partners on how to work together at a very high level. It is not, it's not a NEPA document. It is not, it doesn't hold any agency to do anything. We all have to go through our NEPA processes. It's really this broad collaborative effort to conserve bi-state sage-grouse. And so I'll get into the details. So first of all, there may be some folks who just don't even know kind of much about the bi-state sage-grouse and what they are. And so I want to talk about what is a bi-state sage-grouse. Bi-state sage-grouse are a bird that lives in sagebrush habitats in the area highlighted on the map from about Carson City to Nevada to Bishop, California, along that California-Nevada borderlands. They are the same species as the greater sage-grouse that lives across the west in the gray habitat on that map, but they are, as you can see, geographically separated, and they've also been found to be genetically distinct. That's a whole bunch of words. I want to actually show you these birds. They're kind of amazing, and they do this mating dance where they get together on specific sites called leks in the spring. So I don't know, Philip, if the sound from the video is coming through. But.
No, can't hear this. We can see it.
Can't hear it. Huh?
Can't hear it.
What happened? Okay. Sorry, we jumped ahead. But you could see the birds moving around, doing their funny thing. If you can't hear the sound, I'm gonna give you a view of it one more time. They make this amazing booming noise, but it's really kind of like a balloon popping or I don't know. It's kind of bizarre. So these males are trying to attract the females. Right here, you can see this female who doesn't have any white on her. She's just sitting over there ignoring him. Yes, so one of the things that brings attention to the bi-state sage-grouse is their listing status. And everybody always wants to know what is the listing status of the bi-state sage-grouse, because there was a petition back in 2002 to the Fish and Wildlife Service to list them. And ever since then, they've kind of been back and forth between candidate species for listing and then not warranted. And so right now, currently at the federal level, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is evaluating the bi-state sage-grouse for listing as threatened. They evaluate it as a distinct population segment because of its genetic and geographic distinctness. We keep pushing this out and saying, we think we're going to hear a decision by, we've been kind of pushing it all summer. Right now, the Fish and Wildlife Service is telling us by the end of the year. On the state level, it's also worth noting that the state of California is evaluating sage-grouse across the state, including both the bi-state sage-grouse and the greater sage-grouse occurring in Northern California for potential state listing as threatened or endangered. And that process is kind of earlier than the federal one, and so it will be a while. But besides the fact that there's been this back and forth about whether or not they should be listed, why are they so important, and why do we spend so much time conserving them? And this is a painting and a couple of pictures to demonstrate that the sagebrush ecosystem across the West is really rich in species, and it is imperiled. It's been threatened across the West, and it supports about 350 species of wildlife. But also it occurs adjacent to really important ecosystems like wet meadows and old pinyon woodlands, and the health of all those ecosystems are interdependent. The pinyon jay especially uses both the pinyon woodlands and the open sagebrush. And it's also being reviewed right now by the Fish and Wildlife Service for a 90-day finding. And when we conserve these habitats and ensure that they are healthy for sage grouse, we are also protecting all those many other species across that ecosystem. What is our role in the Bishop Field Office? We manage the habitat for a couple of the largest and core populations in the bi-state. And I don't think I can use my cursor as a pointer, unfortunately, but I'll just direct your eye to the star in the middle of the map that says Bodie. That is the largest population of bi-state sage grouse in the Bodie Hills, and the tan color indicates BLM land. We manage most of the habitat in that population. We also manage a smaller population called sage hen south of Mono Lake, and important parts of the Long Valley population. And between the Long Valley population and the Bodie population, that's most of the grouse in the bi-state. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the action plan. We have been, since 2012, working with the 2012 action plan. It was not even the first action plan. It updated the 2004 action plan that the collaborative partners came together to work on. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation, it's a roadmap. It sets priorities for all the partners. Again, it doesn't commit any entity to any specific action, and all agencies have to do their own planning and compliance. And for us in the federal government, that means we have to do NEPA on any action that we would do that requires that NEPA. But what was really important about the bi-state action plan is that it was accompanied by commitments of the various partners to funding the conservation actions. Taken all together, the partners committed about $45 million toward implementation of the priority actions in the action plan over a 10-year period. And the BLM's share of that over that 10-year period was about $6.5 million. And that was to fund actions in our office, but also for the Carson City district of the BLM in Nevada. So who writes this kind of a high-level collaborative plan? In this case, there is this really robust collaborative group that's been in existence for decades. The overarching group is a local area working group that welcomes all stakeholders. This graphic shows you kind of the structure of how the group has subgroups that help inform the overall effort. And for the action planning, the technical advisory committee and the specialists on that committee are the ones who really write the action plan with input from all the stakeholders and coordinated by a bi-state sage grouse coordinator who's employed by an outside nonprofit, in this case, Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association. Under the 2012 version of the action plan, we actually implemented, this slide is a little bit old from the beginning of our process of updating the plan. And at that point, we had implemented 90% of the actions in the 2012 plan. We had allocated all that funding that had been committed, including that BLM portion that I mentioned, the $6.5 million for BLM actions, improved nearly 150,000 acres of habitat, and done a lot of monitoring. And that monitoring is really important. So I'm going to shift to that. We partner with the USGS to do monitoring of the grouse, but also to assess the effectiveness of our actions. And so during that 10-year period, the USGS did a study of the effectiveness of our management practices from the action plan, and including a couple key things that were big priorities in that 2012 version, which include conifer removal, sagebrush restoration, meadow restoration, fence modifications, and road closures. And I'm going to get into some more details of what those kind of things are later. But the important outcome of that work was to show that due to those conservation actions, that over that 10-year period, there was a 37% increase in the bi-state sage-grouse population success. So what they did was to compare populations where those kind of treatments occurred to control populations where they did not occur. And so in comparison to the control, which in the graph on the right side of the screen is that dashed dotted line at 1, the population success, it increased progressively over that 10 years. That's what that upward sweeping line shows you. And this is what that looks like in terms of how the population is doing. All sage grouse populations naturally cycle. They go up and down. In fact, if they weren't going up and down, we'd be really worried about the population health. That's a natural feature. And so in order to look at their overall trend, you have to look at it over time, and you have to look at basically the low points of the cycle from progressively over time. Are they declining? Are they stable? And if you compare the Great Basin, the graph on the left, overall in the period that we have data for sage grouse, there's been a 2.9% yearly on average decline of those populations, and the different colored bands are over different time periods. And so over the kind of pinkish purple color band since the 1990s, that decline has actually increased to 3.2% annually on average. Whereas in the bi-state, the average annual decline had been about 2.2% over the period of the data record. But in more recently, since the 1990s, it's very close to stable, 0.05% per year. And the more recent trends are really encouraging. And USGS says that they can show with their study that a lot of that stabilization, that 7% increase in population success has basically translated into this stabilization in the population. So why are we now going through this effort to update our collaborative action plan if it's been so successful? Well, after a decade, we've completed most of the priority actions. And there's been environmental and social change, and we need to update the threats and the risks to the populations. We need to include the local tribes who have become really interested in this effort and add new stakeholders. We need to determine what should our priority conservation actions be moving forward. And we really wanted to include a landscape-wide look that also benefits the adjacent ecosystems and species like pinyon jay, as I mentioned earlier. So this is the process that we have been through. It's been 2 years. We started in 2023. 2023 was devoted to gathering input from stakeholders across the bi-state. I won't read to you all these different efforts that we went through in 2023, but we made a big effort to go to the communities that are adjacent to these habitats and gather input and reach out to everyone. And so we went to Dyer on the east side of the Whites. We went to Wellington. We didn't just have meetings in the urban centers. And then we gathered that input, wrote a draft plan, and in 2024, we've been focused on getting public and stakeholder review of that draft. We've repeated all of those meetings and all of that outreach. We've also, as I mentioned, increased our efforts to involve the tribes, and so we've had tribal-specific meetings, intertribal meetings, both last year, and we will be holding another one hosted by the Mono-Seneca tribe next week to gather final input on what's in the draft plan. And again, I want to emphasize every time I say we, this is the larger collaborative, not just the Bishop Field Office. Because we manage those largest populations, we provide a lot of technical expertise and a lot of leadership, but this is a collaborative effort, and the leadership is the bi-state coordinator, not our office. In total, there have been 220, the attendance at these meetings has been 223 people. And we hope to have the final version out by the end of the year. Now I want to spend some time just telling you kind of what this draft updated plan does. But in that process, I want to focus on what it does in the populations that our office has a role in. So this map, again, is of the bi-state, and it shows the different populations of grouse within the bi-state that were considered in this version of the action plan. And I want to highlight for you the ones where our office has a big role. Again, that's the Bodie Hills. This smaller population at Seichen, which will be abbreviated in some of these slides as SH. And then we manage parts of the habitat in Long Valley, which will be abbreviated sometimes as LV. Don't get too worried about this really busy slide, but I want to show you this because it lists all of the risks that were considered in this updated action plan. They are evaluated across every single subpopulation. And it also shows you how variable the risks are across the bi-state. The bi-state topographically is very diverse, socially and economically very diverse. We're going from, Carson City and the Pine Nut Mountains to the Whites. And so the risks are really variable. And this is the importance of doing this kind of high-level action planning. I'm going to talk about what were the highest threats to the populations that we have a role in managing. And so that's Bodie Hills, abbreviated as BH. And in that case, the only threat that came out as a high-level threat was wildfire. And that speaks to a lot of the actions that we've done that have mitigated some of these other things. In Long Valley, wildfire is also a high threat. And both motorized and non-motorized recreation are at a high level, and predation by ravens. I'll get into the details of why we're concerned about raven predation, were high level threats. And in this very small population of sage hen, wildfire is also a high threat. The wild horses that Sherry already talked about that are outside of their designated territory in the grouse habitat are a high threat, and just the actual small nature of that population itself. So I briefly want to talk about what does the action plan emphasize for these threats that are most important in the habitat that we are managing. So wildfire was a high threat across the board pretty much, except for a couple high elevation populations. And what the action plan does there is it emphasizes fire prevention practices and education, fire preparedness and planning. There's a set of fire best management practices for when we're in a fire suppression situation that emphasize protecting as much sagebrush habitat as possible, and aggressive suppression of fires in sage grouse habitat. And then post-fire restoration, seeding, and things like that, and strategic fuel reduction treatments that won't remove habitat, but will hopefully protect habitat from burning. I mentioned motorized recreation. One of the concerns that we have about both types of recreation is that while it's perceived that this has increased a lot, and Sherry talked about it in her presentation, we don't have a lot of great data. And we do not want to proceed without knowing what is the level of motorized use that's going on in sage grouse habitat, and then most importantly, is that actually having an impact on the grouse population? So here, the action plan directs us to partner with USGS and really try to tease that out and find out if and where that activity is having an impact. And then if we have that information, we can plan and implement actions like seasonal road closures. And we know it also calls out that all the partners that manage lands in the Long Valley should look at a comprehensive recreation management plan. Sherry, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so this was on the agenda, so I feel like we should at least spend a little bit more time talking about it. It's been something we've been talking about for a long time. I've started talking with DWP about it. Long Valley is an important place for hot springs, and so we have a lot of visitation there. Certainly one of them, up to 100,000 visitors a year to some of the hot springs. And so because of that, we really need to do a recreation area management plan, similar to the Alabama Hills one, but I think it would be focused a little bit more on recreation and just talk about what do we need to do to make sure we can allow the recreation to continue, but that it is the impacts are minimized to the greatest extent possible. So we have been collecting data. We have some similar data that we had at the Alabama Hills, but significantly less. And so this is a place we're working with Mono County. They have some traffic counters that they've purchased. And then we are also working with USGS and some other partners to just try and get some more data so that we can figure out what's going on out there. We do have all the dispersed campsites inventoried, and so we monitor those, and we have here's a picture of one, people camping in the lek. So, you know, we do have them all. So that's a big thing that we're trying to do, is just get that same information we had for the Alabama Hills. What is the use like? What are people doing out there, and how many users are there?
Okay, and so non-motorized recreation is also a concern, as Sherry just mentioned. And the same thing is true. We don't have enough information about where it's happening and if it's actually having an impact on the birds' populations. And so that is an emphasis item. And then working on education with partners and the planning that Sherry's referenced. Sherry also talked about our efforts to look at the wild horses that are outside of their designated territory. They are in the habitat at Sage-Hen, and the goals in the action plan are to keep horse herds at their appropriate management levels and within their areas and territories, and where that's not true, do the necessary planning and to implement captures and if they're appropriate. And then there's also site-specific strategies to protect sensitive smaller locations like springs and things like that from horse impacts if necessary. I mentioned ravens. So predation, when we say predation threats in the action plan, the technical advisory committee looked at all nature of predators, everything eats sage grouse. But the one that is particular concern is ravens, because their populations have exploded. They are a species that is disturbance adapted. They follow humans around. They feed on trash that we leave out, and they use our structures as nesting perches. And so as human activity increases, so has raven populations, and then they feed on the sage grouse. USGS has really good research on numbers on what population threshold of ravens is of a concern for sage grouse. And so the populations that show a high threat for sage grouse are past that threshold, measured numbers of ravens. The strategies to deal with this is continued monitoring, so we know the population levels of ravens, but then implementing whatever control measures are available. In California, we don't have the authority to do lethal control. They're under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and that has to be permitted by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But in Long Valley, USGS has been oiling the eggs with a non-toxic oil that makes the egg not hatch. And that has been effective because the pair of birds stays on their territory. Other birds don't move in, and they don't have chicks to feed. So they're not going out and predating the eggs at the same level. And then I mentioned that small populations in and of themselves are a risk, because if there is a bad year, if we have an extreme drought, those populations really suffer because they have so few birds, or if there's a big wildfire. And you can see that we have a number of small populations across the bi-state, and one of the ones where we manage habitat is at Sage-Hen. So, one of our main things we want to do is we want to evaluate if that area can, how much of a population can it support, reduce those other threats to those populations, and then consider translocations if they are necessary. USGS has been translocating into the Parker population. They did a number of years of translocations that we think have been successful. We'll see if the population can self-support now that the translocations aren't going on. But we're also involved because Bodie is the largest population, so it tends to be a source for birds to be moved. So those were the highest level threats that we are concerned about in our office. I want to mention that we're going to continue with the highly successful habitat treatments that were in the 2012 plan. And those include conifer removal. In this case, that refers to pinyon, juniper, and sometimes in the bi-state Jeffrey pine that is establishing in open sagebrush habitats. We're not talking about the core woodlands, the old woodlands, the Jeffrey pine forest. We're talking about open sagebrush that is converting to trees. That's a concern because those trees use up water and the meadows and springs dry out. It impedes connectivity for the grouse. It provides predator perches, and grouse avoid tall structures because they could house a predator. But on the other hand, we have to do this very carefully because pinyon and juniper are very important cultural resources to bi-state tribes. And in the last decade, since the last plan was written, we are starting to see really concerning impacts from climate change, disease, and insects, and wildfire and drought on old core pinyon woodlands. So the new action plan's approach is to be very strategic, to target key habitat, connectivity for the birds, water availability, and also to be very aware of how to protect pinyon jay habitat. So I have a before and after picture of one of our projects here where we see pinyon jay using this like crazy post-treatment. There's a set of best management practices in the draft action plan that came out of our experience in our office on how to best plan and implement these kinds of conifer removal projects that really emphasizes the tribal consultation component, the partnership with tribes, and making sure that these edges benefit wildlife. We're going to continue mitigating infrastructure, small-scale infrastructure impacts. This was very successful. According to the USGS study, there's a picture of someone marking a fence so grouse can see it as they come into Lek before dawn. We'll continue to do that, or mitigating small roads where necessary, any small structures with perch deterrents, et cetera. And then, mineral exploration and mining proposals has come up. Mineral exploration was considered in this small scale infrastructure category, and the mitigations include making sure there are seasonal restrictions in the authorizations for that, and that really effective restoration gets done afterwards. We'll continue the monitoring efforts that have been really important. And we also want to assess the actual impact of research and monitoring itself, because we've been doing this over a long period of time in these populations, and have a tighter relationship with our research partners by establishing a steering committee for the research. As a reminder, I already talked about the timeline, but we've been working really hard to gather input on this draft. The intertribal meeting is coming up next week, and then the technical advisory committee will review all the input we've gotten this summer, and the coordinator will draft the final and hopefully get it finished by the end of this year. That concludes my presentation, so I'll hand it to Matt to coordinate any comments or questions.
Well, let's take questions from RAC members first, and then we'll go to public. If you could put it to back to the, we can see each other.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, it looks like Mary has a question.
Great. Go ahead, Mary. We can't see you quite yet, but we will in a second.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. As a traveler through the area, I am concerned about the roads, and you had a slide right before the monitoring, that snowy monitoring slide that talked about fencing, and you had a term that I didn't really understand called letdown. Could you just expand on what you mean by fencing there?
Yeah, thanks for that. There's a number of ways to reduce the impact that fences have on habitat and on the bird populations. I showed the picture of marking those reflective markers so that they're more visible to the birds. And then even better is to construct a letdown fence, which means that it can be put down on the ground during seasons when the livestock are not present, and then put back up when they are there. So during the sensitive season, when the birds are mating, it's down on the ground, and then it's put up when it's needed for the livestock. That also keeps it from being damaged by snow impacts. And then the best thing is to remove it from the landscape if it's not needed. But if the livestock grazing is still there, then we need the fence. Does that answer?
Yeah, I was thinking the fencing was related to the roads. I I don't know about driving on the roads at dusk. I think there's an impact on these animals, on these sage grouse.
Okay, yeah. So the fencing in general, unless it is a right-of-way fence along a busy highway, is usually associated with grazing. But Caltrans in Long Valley, I don't know if you have been there and seen this, after the really big winter, they converted all their right-of-way fencing along the highway to let down because it all got destroyed by the snows.
I think she's also just asking about just
Yeah.
roadkill. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just don't think we
And
see a lot of that.
There have been documented cases where vehicles have impacted grouse on the road. But it's not the most common way that grouse die.
Okay.
They mostly get eaten.
Although roadkill can lead to more ravens, right? And so, yeah, making sure there are less roadkill can be it's still really good. And there's some wildlife crossing proposals coming in right now in the Eastern Sierra, which could help us with the deer at least.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I had a couple related questions. One is I wonder, I'm curious what the strategic fuel reduction treatments are. And two, it seems to me that perhaps fire would be good for clearing pinyon and pine out of some of these areas.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. The strategic fuel reduction treatments are mostly they need to be designed so that they provide a place for the firefighters to work effectively to keep fires small. And so generally that is along existing disturbances like roads. So it would be like roadside mowing where we're not really impacting the core habitat for the grouse, but hopefully provide a strategic place where firefighters can work and keep the size of the fire small. The concern with fire in sagebrush and in grouse habitat is that we now have invasive annual grasses, primarily cheatgrass, that have invaded it, and they increase after fire, and then they increase the fire cycle. They bring back fire more frequently. And so that's the reason why you're right on about the increase in trees is at least partially due to the fact that we've put out a lot of fires. Fire would naturally control the extent of trees. But with the introduction of cheatgrass, it becomes a conundrum. And if we use fire and use that natural tool, then we can actually cause harm to the habitat.
Thanks for the answer.
Great. Looks like Chris has got his hand up.
It's kind of some similar questions. Well, first of all, I just want to commend the team that's put together the draft 2024 action plan for including language regarding potential impacts to woodland dependent species like the pinyon jay, and also working with the tribes on incorporating traditional ecological knowledge. Is great to see that in there. I do have some questions about some of the potential risks of doing conifer removal in sagebrush habitat. Specifically, I'm interested in what treatment methods you're using and whether you are seeing an increase in cheatgrass and other exotics in some of the treatment areas. And I'm also wondering, there was a lot of language about the need to consider impacts to woodland dependent species or specifically the pinyon jay, and but I'm just wondering kind of how that happens in practice. I'm wondering if you could speak to those two issues.
Okay, I will do my best. There's a lot there and I could probably talk all day about it. So I'll try not to. So let me take first what methods do we use for conifer removal? And speaking just for our office in the Bishop Field office, we are treating very early phases of pinyon and juniper expansion. And so it's like that picture that I showed. It's very sparse young trees. And we do it all by hand. So it's crews on foot. They will use loppers or chainsaws. And then if the trees are of a big enough size to create a pile, we like to get that fuel off the landscape. And so we will create piles and do pile burning in the winter when there's snow on the ground to try and get some of the slash off the landscape. Sorry, that Michael also.
Just really quick, didn't you just open up a couple of areas around levining for Christmas tree permits as a way to reduce the fuels?
We also offer Christmas tree permits in a few locations in the Bodie Hills, and that can help to target those very young Christmas tree size trees, but it doesn't remove them all. And so we have to still do some treatments. And in the bi-state, so we're going beyond our office. Those are the methods that we use. We find them to be very low impact. We have not seen that increase in cheatgrass. Sometimes we will see a flush in the footprint of the pile, but our treatments, once they are 10 years old or so, we're not seeing that anymore. And so we find it to be low impact. We find that it is not increasing cheatgrass. And we actually have some other USGS studies that document that. Across the bi-state in general, people are using these low impact methods. I'm not going to say that in the north end of the bi-state where they have denser pinyon and more juniper, that they don't use some mechanical methods. They do, but we're not using big dozers and chains, which some people are imagining. And that does happen in other parts of the West, but it is not used in our area. So I think that's part of your question. And then you were asking about how we consider pinyon jay. And one of the things we use the Pinyon Jay Working Group's checklist for designing treatments. And we try to make sure that the edges that we leave are very graduated, like the picture that I showed you. The Pinyon Jay like that interface between pinyon woodlands and sagebrush, and they actually cache the pine nuts often in the sagebrush outside the woodland. And they like that those scattered trees at the edge. So we leave scattered trees at the edges. And then we are working with USGS and some other researchers from Great Basin Bird Observatory to monitor the effects of our treatments on the pinyon jay colonies that are present in the Bodie Hills and watch their use of our treatment areas and learn from that and make sure that we are benefiting them as well. And we've actually seen an increased detection of pinyon jays in those areas where we've done our treatments. So far, that's really preliminary.
Great. It sounds like you guys are really trying to strike a balance there. And that's more than can be said for other groups. So thank you.
Thanks for that. Philip, is there any other hands raised from our panelists?
Here. Not from RAC.
Got one right here. Just
Reb or Nancy, anyone have any comment?
I have Michael right beside me. He's got his hand raised.
Okay.
In real life.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just to try to clarify something on the Long Valley unit, you mentioned that OHV is a high risk. And can we clarify that, what it actually entails? Because I'm familiar with the area and there is an OHV component, typical OHV green sticker component within that area. But a lot of the motorized traffic in there is plated vehicles going into the hot springs or Benton Crossing or the fishing. And there's all these other mixed uses in there. There's a lot of vehicle traffic. So how do we parse out what's typically envisioned as OHV as green sticker versus plated vehicles and driving down dirt roads kind of OHV traffic impact? Because that's going to lead to the discussions on closures and seasonal closures and limited use and restrictions of use and everything else. So there's a lot of traffic.
You said it way better than I could. And the words on my slide were that we are concerned about both OHV and vehicles on legal roads, right? And so it's not people breaking the law or doing it. It's just that there is so much use in Long Valley, and it's people doing all kinds of things there. It's the green sticker OHV, but most of it is just vehicles on roads going to hot springs, going to the river, going to fly fish, going to run, doing everything just in that small place. And that's the reason, because we can't parse it out right now, that's the reason that the very first priority is to have a monitoring plan and try and parse it out and actually see where it's having an impact on the birds. We don't want to, try and manage something that's not impacting the birds. If driving the paved road on Benton Crossing is not a problem, then we don't want to identify that as a problem. So the first thing is to do the monitoring and try and tease those things out. And the next thing is to do the management plan. There have been seasonal closures in place in Long Valley for roads that go to and through Lex. A lot of them are on DWP lands that have been super successful. It's one of the things in the US GEOS study that was really encouraging, is that just seasonally putting it, locking a gate for a short period of time has huge benefits.
And those have been in place, at least the ones on the BLM since 2008, right? They've been there a long time. But we are working with our headquarters, rather than having the grouse people figure out how to count number of humans out there. We're working with our headquarters office, the recreation and social group, right? The people who know how to count people and what they're doing. Because we get kind of grouse oriented and we forget that those people don't maybe know how to count OHVs and versus motorcycles versus regular cars.
He's got a motor and he's got four wheels, it's OHV.
Yeah. So we are working with our headquarters to design that and to talk about having just a workshop to do that with a larger group of recreation people rather than biologists, right? So that's really a focus.
That whole area has seen an explosion in use along with everything with the hot springs, and it's become the backyard for mammoth.
And I think that's what the biologists are seeing. And then when we see problems with grouse numbers, it's easy to just say there's an issue there. But what we want to make sure is that we have the data to say, is there an issue related to the recreation? What is it?
And
that's the goal.
Meaningful result rather than just keep throwing stuff at it.
It looks like we have two more hands. I'm going to go with Nancy next and then try to keep us on schedule here. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. My only concern with this Long Valley area is, let's say that you do find that there is a huge impact and you want to close some of the areas. Some people will understand and some people will be revengeful. And I hate to think about if the grouse is the identified reason that they would then become a target. And that's just humanity. Can we do this in a manner that it doesn't focus it on them and say it's a re-veg area or in addition to the grouse? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know we don't want this to become, I worked in the Pacific Northwest during the spotted owl stuff where they were selling spotted owl helper instead of hamburger helper, right? So I absolutely agree. And I think, as you can see, what we did with both of these plans is we're very inclusive when we develop plans. And so we would also want to make sure that whatever we did, we had the buy-in as much as we could from people. So I think we can't hide it. We really focus on the sage-grouse because that's what the plan is. But when I give talks, I try really hard to just talk about the sagebrush. This whole system is imperiled. There's pygmy rabbits actually out in Long Valley too, and they're the cutest animal on earth. So we don't have to pin it on the sage-grouse. It's the pygmy rabbits. It's just having a better recreation experience because there's too many people there. So I agree, and that's really good input. And we will try, just like these other two plans, to make sure whatever we do, we get as much buy-in as possible from this people who are out using it.
And before I go away, I just want to say all these presentations have been just outstanding and very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Chris, do you have a quick follow-up question?
Yeah, I don't know how quick it is. It's more about post-fire restoration and whether the field office has any experience with it or any of the partners. So it might be a longer discussion.
I can answer it
go
really
ahead.
briefly, Matt, and then yes, we do have experience with it. It is very difficult to do. So seeding and planting, the success rates are very low. But there is an emphasis on that in the action plan and the Seeds of Success program, and collecting local native seed. But you're right, it is very difficult to do.
Great. And if you need to talk offline on that, maybe you can follow up with Heather. Let's go to public. On my list, I don't see any hands raised among the attendees right now. So I'll call for that. Okay, not seeing any movement there. Philip, you feel like we're ready to wrap this up?
Yep. Yeah. If that's, yeah, we way to keep it right on time. We are just 1 minute over.
Okay, well, I want to weigh in and just say Heather, that was a great presentation. I mean, just so comprehensive. And I do think that this bi-state sage routes effort is really, I always say that this is how conservation should be done ahead of listings, or, this is actually the people on the ground locally trying to weigh in and solve a problem, as opposed to waiting for there to be some regulations that come in that don't always make sense, in the long run. So I really give you guys credit for doing that. So let's take a 15-minute break.
Yep.
And we'll be back at 11 o'clock.
Sounds good. Okay. Be back at 11. Thanks.
Mute us, yeah.
Off mute the whole
Okay.
time. Okay, we're off mute, just so you know.
Thanks, Kaya.
But it's. Um. Does it look like everybody's back, Philip?
Look here. Lori, yep. Lori, are you back with us? Thanks, Bob.
Well, let's go ahead and, it is 11. Let's go ahead and start back. And it looks like it's Chris is up next.
Here, I'll get the PowerPoint loaded up.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. And yeah, good job on the timing. We're on at this meeting. That's great. I really, it must be the donuts, right?
Well, we've still got some donuts, so if anybody's hungry.
Yeah, I shouldn't have brought it up.
That's not nice.
Yeah, right, right. So yeah, big thanks to Sherry, Heather, and the whole staff there in Bishop for the presentations, and it's the tip of the iceberg, the things they're working on. Clearly, Alabama Hills and the bi-state sage-grouse are two key areas, but gosh, so much more. And I appreciated the overview as well. And one common theme that Sherry mentioned in that overview was partnerships. And it became clear in the two focused areas there of just how critical those partnerships are for us to get our work done and integrating with all the stakeholders and folks involved in public lands. And that's a pervading approach across the whole district. And it's one that it's enjoyable, it's challenging at times, but it's just really leverages the resources that we have, under the federal government to manage public lands with the partners and the resources they bring to bear, let alone the knowledge and experience that everybody has. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that point, and they're doing a fabulous job in Bishop of establishing those partnerships. Yeah, go ahead, Philip, on the next slide. I think there's some bullets there, but I'm probably I might riff a little bit here on different topics. So yeah, I'll cover these, but maybe in a little bit different order. So one thing I wanted to start with, so most of the on the ground work, the field offices will cover those things. So the district is here to support the field offices. So most of those projects that you'll hear about, we have our fingers in them to varying degrees, but trying to support them and help move things along. A couple of kind of overarching topics. So the employee engagement, wanted to touch on that. I don't know if we've talked about it before, but every year there's a federal employees viewpoint survey that goes out. Every federal employee can provide feedback as to just how things are going and how, their degree of satisfaction with the work and, what the issues are and all that. And but it's a national deal, and it's sometimes hard to drill down and really get some meaningful, what can we do differently to make our employees and our place of work, as fulfilling and satisfying as it can be. And so what we did this year, and I really give kudos to, we have an employee ambassador, designated person, Romina Capata. She's in the Bakersfield office. So she helps, with that kind of communication. So we established a survey specific to our district, and we just sent it out a few weeks ago with about 10, maybe not quite 10, but open-ended questions to really get more specifics as to what the employees, because typically we'll get some feedback that, that's like, we're doing okay in one area, but we could do better in other areas. So we really wanted to focus in on those areas where we typically, are not doing quite as well in terms of supporting employees or feeling like the workload isn't either equitable or it's just too much, those types of things. So we wanted to hear more directly from all the employees as to what they really thought the issue was and their suggestions for what we can do better. So people have been filling that out. It closes at the end of this week, and I'm really looking forward to diving into that and seeing what we've got and coming up with actionable items that we can then, work on to just better make it a fulfilling place to work. So I just wanted to let you know that's an internal thing that we're doing now across the district. And Reb's got your hand up. I'll run through these, Reb, and then maybe we can take questions in a minute. So
That's fine.
Yeah, great. Let's see, vacancies, we're at about a 15% vacancy rate for the district, which is actually the target for the state. And I think nationally, they want us to be no higher than 15%. And so we're there, but we've got a number of hires in the pipeline. And actually, we're probably a little bit lower than that. But if we get everything taken care of course, it's a moving target because as we hire people on and some people leave. But I think we'll be well below 10, probably closer to 5 by the end of the year going into next year. So that's exciting. Also wanted to mention in just the terms of, hiring, et cetera, the last few months, our deputy district manager, Ruben Leal, he's been on detail to the state office. Many of you know Ruben. And so we've had an acting in his place, and that's Sarah Matthews, who has helped out with some of our RAC meetings in the past. And I just want to really give her credit. She couldn't I don't think she's on now because she's working on another project, but she's done a fabulous job. I wanted to acknowledge her stepping in and really tackling some issues and doing a great job for us. And Ruben is scheduled to be back, I think the next week or two. So that detail assignment's about over. Another cross-cutting issue that's actually not on our list here, but it's emerged most recently is from the water boards. They deal with non-point source pollution and other sources of pollution to protect water quality. So there's state regional water quality control boards. For several years, they've been in the process of trying to develop, I guess, a more regulatory program that would deal with non-point sources. So non-point sources, for those that don't know, these were things that are not a point source discharge. So general runoff from like timber operations and grazing and those things where you've got diffuse sources of impacts to water quality. So they're charged with that protection. And they're recently in the process of coming up with more rigid orders to the federal land management agencies, BLM included, that will require more notification, kind of permits. What are we doing? What are the projects? Monitoring? How are we, effectiveness monitoring? And a lot of requirements that we haven't otherwise been able to do. And I just all that is I will just say the intent of all that is good. It's meeting with the Clean Water Act. And it's what we feel we're already doing kind of as well as we can. And so we're dealing with those orders and pushing back slightly, or maybe not slightly, because we are concerned that some of the actions that they're requiring may, one, they're duplicative because we cover a lot of those issues through our NEPA analysis, through our consultation, through Endangered Species Act consultations with the regulatory agencies. We've got best management practices that are built into most every action that we're doing, and where we can, we're monitoring the effects of those things. So functionally, we feel like we're already meeting that, and we're concerned about an added burden of extra paperwork that actually might slow down some of the implementation of projects that are actually intended to provide watershed health and recovery. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know, these are some of the things that we deal with in the background, and we're in the process. The North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, for CenCal just affects the Ukiah field office, also Arcata, to Northern California. But we're expecting orders from the Central Valley Board also, which affects quite a few more of our field offices, and kind of still figuring out how the order affects or doesn't the Lahontan Board affecting Bishop in particular. So another kind of cross-cutting issue that we're dealing with there. Let's see what's on my official list here. Trespass funds. So fuel management is still high priority, and I think we've mentioned that before. We did get settlement funds from PG&E for the Butte fire. Those are in the Motherlode field office, and we've hired a project manager to specifically address those, work with the fire program, and those are largely for some restoration work, but a lot of preventative fuel treatment, forest thinning, those types of things. So really excited. It's a good chunk of money to get a lot of work done there. So excited about that. The Foundation for America's Public Lands is a relatively new foundation. I'm not sure if we've talked about that before, but they're getting up and running, and there are more and more discussions. Basically, their foundation, similar to the National Parks Foundation, that essentially raises private funding that then goes to support public land. So BLM kind of has a new foundation that's intended to help support many of our activities. There's been more engagement, communication, but we're really excited about the prospect of getting some additional support for some of these collaborative projects and high priority activities on our land. So that's in the works. National conservation lands are continue to be a high priority, and as we talked about at the last meeting with the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument and some of the expansion there, that's been an exciting development. And I would also mention we've got monuments throughout the district. Fort Ord National Monument, lots of things going on there, and then the Coastal National Monument is an exciting one, and we have a monument manager there that we didn't have for several years, and she's really Lisa Caparrot, and she's really establishing some great partnerships and connections and trying to find additional funding to support many activities on the California Coastal National Monument. So that's been an exciting development recently as well. And yeah, just others may touch on this too, but National Public Lands Day, the official days at the end of the week, we've got, the end of the month, and we've got at least probably more than this activity scheduled at the Cosumnes River Preserve, Carrizo Plain, and Fort Ord National Monument. I'm guessing there's more than that, but that's a great opportunity usually there's some type of volunteer and public outreach event for folks to engage in activities on public land. So that's always exciting. And participants usually get a nice, cool free shirt out of it. So anyway, let's see. I think I will leave it at that and turn it over to my esteemed colleagues in the field offices to go through what they've got going. So sorry if I took too long, Philip.
Just want to mention, look, I'm going to try to keep us on track to be done around 12:30, partly because I have to leave at 12:30. And it looks like you have just a few, maybe 5 or 10 minutes set aside for each field office. I know Reb's got a question, but would our group be willing to save, I'll take Reb's question now, but then be willing to save our questions to the end and ask each field office the question after the presentations? I can't see anyone, so I'm just thinking you're all nodding yes. But let's, if Reb had a question, let's go ahead and get that.
Yes, this is Reb. First of all, Chris, I really appreciate your comments on particularly the employment engagement of basically the department at this level, particularly our level here, where you're really listening to your employees and trying to ferret out very specific areas. I think that's really valuable for the ability for us to provide the services that we're required to provide. And lastly, just to comment, I like the co-stewardship component that you hit on, particularly that area of the tribal consultations. That area has always interested me. Having been on the RAC for many, many years, I remember we never did ever discuss any of that. And now it's really on the forefront, and I appreciate that. And I'll leave that for my comments. That's the end. Thank you.
And Philip, briefly, wanted to say,
Bob's got one too.
In respect to the non-point source and the water boards, roads are a big one, and sediment off of roads. And also, I think fire breaks are entering that picture. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Let's just pass it on around. We'll go to Brentsfield next to be fire.
Actually, let's go to Bakersfield.
I think it's
Gabe.
Okay.
Gabe.
Yeah. Morning all. Again, Gabe Garcia, BLM field manager here. And we can jump to the next slide if you want, Philip.
I'm sharing this screen.
All right. So we've had a pretty busy summer, as Chris alluded to in his intro. Lots of fire activity that we've been involved in, and I'm going to highlight four of those fires. We've had I don't have an exact number, but we've had quite a few fires this summer, and four of them in particular have taken a lot of time and from our staff. So the first one is the Hurricane Fire. And this one was a lightning caused fire. So it started on July 13th, I think it was. It was a weekend where you got a bunch of lightning hits throughout the San Joaquin Valley. And so the Hurricane Fire started in the Carrizo Plain National Monument. It ran for about 20,000 acres. So a pretty big fire for the Carrizo Plain. And we were able to get that put to bed in about 3 days. And I mentioned that just because, typically we're out there for, half a day, maybe a day, getting things under control. But this one did get some legs. Like I said, the weather pattern was a little bit erratic for this time of year with both lightning and wind. And so it did make a few runs in the Carrizo Plain National Monument. We were able to get that under control pretty quick, fairly quickly, I guess. Just using some of the natural features that are already out there, plus the road system. We weren't able to put in much dozer line in most of the areas, and just kind of use the features that were already out there. From a damage standpoint, not much damage. Mostly just the grasses were impacted. The fire did get down into the Kern County oil fields, and so there was some impacts there, but nothing major. That same weekend, the Long Fire started, and the Long Fire was over in Tulare County, in the Chimney Peak Wilderness area, Domeland Wilderness area. It was part of the Sequoia Lightning Complex, so there were several fires tied to it. The Long Fire was the fire that did impact BLM land. About 9,000 acres, about 60 to 70% of that was BLM. Luckily on that one, the weather did shift a bit, and so we were able to get that one kind of under control in about a week. We did have to bring in an incident management team to manage that fire, along with several other fires in that complex. But we were able to get that one under control. We did take some damage in that. The Long Valley campground was essentially destroyed. So we'll have to be doing some replacement of bathrooms there, signage. And there's a riparian area that runs through that area as well. So there'll be some monitoring of springs and other things that we'll need to do as part of our emergency stabilization plan. Because silver lining, we did get some road work that's been needed up there completed with some of the suppression activity. And so things are looking a little bit better there in that regard. But it's going to be several years before we kind of get that campground back up and running again. But we're currently in the process of requesting funding for that. Then that same week, so roughly late last weekend, July, we did the Burrell Fire occurred in the Kern River Valley area, Kern County. It initiated in the Kern Canyon, the Highway 178 corridor that leads from Bakersfield up to Lake Isabella. It was caused by a car accident that then the car did catch fire. Unfortunately, the driver of that car died in that accident. And then the fire did escape the area and get into the wildlands. So that fire actually, got quite, it became very destructive and very big pretty quickly. That particular day we were seeing temperatures in the 105-degree range, along with single digit relative humidity. So things were ripe for that fire to spread pretty quickly. And then we were getting 35 mile an hour wind gusts. So that one ended up being about 60,000 acres. It was the largest wildland fire in Kern County history. It ended up destroying 152 homes. We were about 18% of that fire, so 11,000 acres of BLM lands were impacted there. We're currently in that emergency stabilization phase on this fire as well. So we're working with a number of different agencies: Forest Service, California Geological Survey, CAL FIRE, Kern County, and then NRCS to kind of help the community kind of get back on their feet a bit. There are several areas that we're concerned with debris flows coming off of the hillsides outside of some of the areas that were impacted by the fire, specifically the community of Havilah. And so we are working to kind of get some stabilization plans in place and divert the flows as best we can there. And then lastly here, so onto the coffee pot fire. So this one's burning in Tulare County, near the town of Three Rivers. The fire started in the Sequoia National Park. This one was caused by lightning. And currently it's 13,000 acres and about 37% contained. And roughly 40% of that's on BLM lands. So we've been working on this fire for the last several weeks. The fire started in an area where there was just no way to go direct. And so we ended up having to do some indirect line for this and do some backfiring operations. So things are actually looking good. The fire was pretty low intensity in most areas. It did impact just about all of our giant sequoia groves that we visited on our trip the last time we were up there. But everything is looking pretty good. So there's 110 monarch trees, and there's about 4 of those that we have concerns about. But we have a team up there monitoring and doing some assessments this week. So we should have some more information on that here in the coming days. And then other than that, just real quickly, Keysville activity plan comment period ended at the end of August. We're going through comments now. We did get 24 unique comments. So we did get a lot of form letters and other things, but 24 unique comments, and we're going through those, incorporating those comments into the plan and also addressing them. And then lastly, oil and gas projects. Things are still pretty busy when it comes to oil well abandonments in our area. And the number of new oil permits or new oil wells has decreased a bit this year. And so that our workload has gone down a bit, but we're still facing litigation on basically anything that we approve. So some of the workload's going down, but in other areas it's going up as far as the litigation goes. But that's all I have for updates. I do think I have one more slide that shows some pictures of the fire activity. So that first picture there on the left is of the coffee pot fire up in the Case Mountain area. The picture there is of a CXT restroom at the Long Valley Campground that was completely destroyed. And then right below that, that's a picture of the oil fields outside of the Carrizo Plain National Monument that was impacted by the hurricane fire. And then to the right of that, that's a picture of the Burrell fire, I think on day 2 of that fire. And then the last picture down at the bottom left-hand corner is of That's a picture of part of the community of Havilah. That was the community that was most impacted by the Burrell fire. So, all right, well, that's all I have. Thank you. Glad to answer questions, I guess, probably at the end.
Yeah. Philip, I'll let you just run us through whoever's next.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, Sherry, anything?
We're going to pass.
Okay.
You guys have heard from us a lot late now.
Yep. All right, Central Coast. Who do we have on for Central Coast? Zachary?
I'm here, Philip.
There you are.
I'm struggling with this mute button. Yeah, Zachary Ormsby, field manager for the Central Coast Field Office. Wanted to give you an update on Chitoni Coast Dairies and thank you for your comments on our environmental assessment for the northern area parking lot and trailhead. We're still going through that. The environmental assessment went out in April and comments were received, nearly 300 comments, mostly in complete support of the project. And in reviewing those comments, typically you'd see that turned around in roughly 60 days and the decision record would be published. But we received really some new information and going out with a certified arborist to look at growth of these trees, where 15 trees were identified as immediate hazards by the arborist. And some of those were in our proposed parking lot and trailhead area. And so that ended up with meeting on site and a very rapid response by PG&E, because 8 of these trees identified lines, and PG&E took immediate need in noting that the power lines had been repaired several times, and they also considered these trees as an imminent threat to their power line infrastructure, specifically a couple of strands of 12,000 kilowatt lines, which are just high power transmission lines. And so we've been working with PG&E exclusion to allow us to rapidly remove these particular 8 trees that are imposing on the power infrastructure, and 8 trees, which has been a really quick turnaround time for them to get on that. And it's really timely. The town of Davenport this last week experienced a small brush fire in the parking lot of their community volunteer fire station, where PG&E lines had failed and created a small brush fire underneath a grove of eucalyptus trees that was put out really by the school principal and some other volunteers in the community before CAL FIRE could get there and finally douse out the rest of those flames. So the threat's imminent and it's real, and we've been delaying making our trailhead and parking lot decision so we could deal with the emergency need, or what we feel is this emergency need in dealing with these hazards and removing the wildfire risk. And so our supplementary rules have been published and are part of the, I believe there's 24 supplementary rules, which to our understanding is the most comprehensive set of supplementary rules within the National Monument System that will allow for greater enforcement of really for safety and resource protection at Chitoni Coast Dairies. And we're working with the county right now to create a county ordinance that will be going before the Board of Supervisors shortly that will empower Highway Patrol and county and city police to be able to enforce BLM regulations in and around Chitoni Coast Dairies. And it will also give our law enforcement officers the ability to enforce county regulations in and around Chitoni Coast Dairies as well. So that's been a great partnership. As far as Fort Ord National Monument is concerned, the place is just a fantastic display of what's possible, and some things that we're hoping to replicate at Chitoni Coast Dairies. And this year, Eric Morgan, the monument manager, was able to get some students out there, college students from the Student Conservation Association. Some of them came from UC Santa Cruz. Some of them came from California State University of Monterey Bay. One of those interns was able to receive a direct hire authority, and that allows for immediate hire into federal service in a non-compete fashion. And he is looking to bring that person on board full-time onto the weeds management crew at Fort Ord National Monument. And this is a project that works really well in getting college students integrated into the research and management and applied science out at Fort Ord National Monument. And we're working with the Foundation for America's Public, which is the BLM's new, that was congressionally designated, and it's been standing up this year to create a similar situation or system at Chitoni Coast Dairies in partnership with UC Santa Cruz that will be based on an endowment. That endowment will fund 5 student interns at Chitoni Coast Dairies in 12-week shifts every summer in perpetuity, so forever. And those students will end up with a direct hire authority as well for immediate hire in a non-compete fashion for federal service. And pardon, I'm a little tired right now. I just came off a week of 16-hour shifts on the Boone Fire. If you don't know about it, it's from Highway 198, which is closed and seemed to be somewhere around the origination point of that fire. It moved northward into Los Gatos Creek Road around the town of Coalinga. Current acreage is about 17,800 acres. The perimeter is held out there for 4 days straight now. 30%, or roughly 5,100 acres, were on BLM land. Our field office showed up in force with CAL FIRE, who has a direct protection authority out in that area, which means that they lead in fighting that fire. And we had roughly a third of our staff. And then we also had district office staff come out there to support our efforts in working with our lessees and protecting resources and grazing operations out in that area. We are in the recovery, repair, suppression, repair process, where we're identifying mitigation strategies for the dozer lines and creating water bars and fencing and gates where appropriate, so they don't turn into trails and we don't get off-roading happening out on the dozer lines, and repair them in such a fashion that it doesn't continue or erosion events don't happen when the rains come. And then also identifying the Coalinga Mineral Springs, which is currently a CDFW property, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we are in the process currently of acquiring that property for the BLM field office. And that we hope that acquisition is complete here this year, and it's a super special place out there. That it had hot springs and it used to have a hotel, Coalinga Mineral Springs. It's worth a quick Google just to check it out. And so there was a lot of damage to that area, and I have to applaud the efforts of the local Fresno Kings County Battalion out there with CAL FIRE and CAL FIRE writ large. They came at this fire with everything. And the mineral springs just ended up being damaged through the transport of all of the machinery through there, and the wildfire as well. And so they've taken a couple of extra days to do a repair that's going to create a better ecosystem out there than what was previously out there. It really had gone unmanaged for a number of years. So it's one of the benefits of this fire and having this great partnership with CAL FIRE is that this fire created an opportunity for us to do some restoration out there and end up with a better landscape than what we started with. And I will issue a reopen order. Clear Creek Management Area is about 4 miles north of this fire. And first day on the fire, I preemptively closed down Clear Creek Management Area. We had law enforcement go through there and evacuate all the campground, 3 campgrounds that we have out there: Oak Flats, Jade Mill, and Condon Peak. And law enforcement did continual patrols to ensure that people weren't going into Clear Creek while we were fighting this fire. And so we'll be issuing a reopen order tomorrow. And that's it from the Central Coast. Back to you, Philip.
Mother Lode, Jeff.
Good morning, everybody. Jeff Horn from Mother Lode Field Office. You've seen this slide a bunch of times. Let's just jump to our updates. Thank you, Phil. So to start off, the Cosumnes River Focal Landscape Project, which I think we mentioned last time we met, we've been very successful on. Kudos to Amy Fesnock, has been able to expend and allocate about, well, over $4 million to projects related to that focal landscape project. And those would include everything from interpretation to fuels projects to working with the local tribes to do some infrastructure improvements and also landscape improvement projects. So it's a great project. It continues to roll along, and we're looking to, with the help of the IRA funding and the bill funding, really do some great stuff out there for the future. This year, our FERC-funded Slab Creek takeout facility was completed, and for the first time has actually been used by the public. So we had about probably more than 1,000 whitewater enthusiasts enjoy some of the finer whitewater in California, which was prior to the FERC relicensing not available to them. So with the additional recreational releases that were worked out during the licensing process, we've got some scheduled days, and they're very popular with the whitewater community, as well as our ongoing recreational releases for other reaches of the American River and the McCollum River. We're doing some great stuff in providing some of the best whitewater, I think, in the state of California and some of the nation. Getting back to one of our big programs in Mother Lode is fuels, and through Good Neighbor authorities and notices of funding opportunity, we have got $680 plus $1,000 out to our partners in fire management and just a great effort, including the Utah Watershed Institute, Tuolumne County, Nevada County, Calaveras County, and a number of fire safe councils to help get projects funded and really work on some of those tough areas for fuels management in our field office. We are somewhat unique, I think, in that we have some very scattered land pattern, and we're in everybody's backyard, as we know, and those are really important projects. So it's really good to see that. And then with the Butte fire, we're just starting to get some of that PG&E settlement money out onto the ground, and that's going to continue through the next couple of years and really make a difference in the foothill communities that surround that fire and also elsewhere. Let's see. We are working on with the County of El Dorado, working on an acquisition for Cronin Ranch to expand one of the in-holdings, or to actually purchase one of those in-holdings that the county wants to get rid of. So that's going to be an ongoing project, and looking forward to getting that completed, hopefully next year. Yeah, so we're continuing. We have had and continue to have a pretty high vacancy rate in our office. And so we are continuing to work on filling those vacancies, and pretty significant ones like archaeology and some of our botany positions and things of that nature. So that affects our ability to do NEPA efficiently. So we're working on filling those positions as we speak. So that's pretty much all I got for updates. We've got one more slide if you can pop to that one. That's just showing some of our fuels treatments and the Bill and Ira funding things going on in the Pine Hill Preserve, and then the CRP and our Slab Creek release. So anyway, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Nick Ukiah.
All righty, good late morning, everyone. Many of you have seen the area of the Ukiah Field Office. One thing that we're moving on and we got funding for is Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument planning. So I recently selected a new permanent monument manager. Some of you may know her. Her name is Kaylee Barnitz. And she started, well, she was in an acting role prior to that. And then I selected her for the permanent role. So she will be spearheading the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument planning efforts, which, as I mentioned, we received funding for, and we're on the verge of selecting a contractor to assist us with that. So that's going to be ongoing for the next 1 to 2 years. With respect to the South Cal Mountain OHV maintenance plan, so we've requested and worked with and got approval from California State Parks to sort of alter our planning efforts for South Cal. And my decision has been because previously we were thinking about adding 40 miles of new trail. And after talking to multiple partners and my staff, the best determination was to maintain what we got, because we're struggling to maintain what we got. And so why should we add 40 miles of new trails or plan on it? We can do that down the road, but right now we have to really improve what we got. And so we're going to be putting together a plan to do just that, is to improve what we got, and through contracts and partner groups, et cetera, to improve South Cal. And we're starting to do that already. Co-stewardship implementation, as many of you know, there are not many co-stewardship agreements in the entire BLM, let alone California. I believe there's 3 in California and 2 out of Ukiah. And so we're kind of the leaders in working with tribes, not just BLM California-wide, but nationwide. And one with 1 tribe and then another one with 2 tribes, and hopefully a 3rd one adding on at some point. And so we're starting off, our new monument manager will also be sort of working with the 2 tribes, because it involves the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, to actually start implementing that plan. And I'm kind of working with my staff on the other co-stewardship agreement plan, which is with the Khoi Nation, to implement that plan. Clyde mine cleanup, that process is starting to get going. It's ramping up. It's interesting. Yesterday, an archaeological the dig was found, and so we had to stop work in that area. And we had an archaeologist go out there and take a look at it. I still haven't talked to him to see what was out there, but you know, to verify that, you know, they can continue work and see what it is. Speaking of archaeologists, we interviewed 4 about a week ago and selected a new archaeologist, our longtime archaeologist of 13 years. Some of you may know him, Chris Lloyd. He went to another field office. And so we made a selection, a very experienced archaeologist, may I say, who's got many, many years of experience, who will be joining our team. So that process will take another, I don't know, month to 2 months, just for the HR process to work its way forward. And then they'll be on board. Next slide. Let's do the next slide.
That's it.
Okay, So that's kind of a wrap up of the Ukiah field office. And one thing I did want to mention, and it's something I signed yesterday actually, which I think is really cool. And I'll end it there. Is we are applying for a grant with California Department of Fish and Wildlife to build a bridge at Scotts Creek on the Lake County side, which is an OHV area, to go over a critical creek that has a species there, the Clear Lake hitch, which is near and dear to many tribes and is a species of concern. And we've been talking about it for years, but it's not easy to come up with $2.5 million. And the reason we know it's $2.5 million is because we had the National Highway Administration give us an estimate essentially to do that. And so that's what it's going to cost. And we just put in a grant. I signed it yesterday to get 2.5 million, hopefully, from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to build this bridge, which would solve so many issues out there with OHV and protecting a critical creek habitat, et cetera. And so we'll know in a month or two if we're going to be awarded that. But if we don't get it this time, we'll try again in one calendar year. But we're keeping our fingers crossed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Brinsfield.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And so I'm gonna go off and give some numbers and things of what I got going on within the district. And so again, my name is David Brinsfield. I'm the district fire management officer, which would be considered a fire chief. What we got going on so far, hey, the first slide if you remember the first slide that when I first joined the group or when the fire participated in the RAC, was over vacancies. And so I want to talk about real quick with the vacancies. If you remember, the slide had 30 plus vacancies. Right now, I'm glad to say 6 is what I have within the program. So I lack 6 key positions within the program. I'm very excited about getting everything filled almost to the point of where we're at full capacity. We got about 92 plus folks in the fire program right now, which is a lot of folks underneath this fire program. A very busy year, as folks know, but the primary carrier for this whole thing with the fires was grass. If you look at all the large fires that we've been having within the district, 137 initial attack fires that somebody from this program was on. So it speaks volumes of how many we've had. I've met with 9 incident management teams. That's both federal and Cal Fire. Still ongoing right now with this fire suppression repairs in talks. We got 7 fires that we're still dealing with when it comes to those suppression repairs. Still dealing right now, like most of the managers have talked about. I have the Boone Fire, the Coffee Pot, and the Burrell. The Burrell is an IC5, but we still have some commitment there just when it comes to smokes, the nuisance smokes, or any kind of calls we're still dealing with. Again, with the amount of fires that we've had, and then being able to fill with the vacancies we've had, we did a really good job supporting the internal fires that we have. And then right now we just sent a third of the program down to the line and the airport fire, which are down south. So we have quite a few folks down there right now. We just sent the water tender and another engine just out of this office. And so we're really busy right now within the state, I would say, for us. Yeah, I think that's, and if you look at the slides that we have, I think we pretty much covered a lot of that, just that we stay intact with all the field offices. I work hand in hand with all the line officers when it comes to fires. I'm very happy with that. We have great support from the line officers who are participating in what we do here when it comes to suppression and managing fires. I think that's it, Chris. I don't think I have anything else. I think there's some slides. Oh, the crew. I guess showcase the crews real quick. So both crews have been out. So they do a 14-day roll, just as the engines do, and then of course some of the individual staff. The crews have been out. They're on their 5th roll. So this will be the 5th 14-day assignment they're on right now. As soon as they get back, they're already slated to go again. So they're all due back here. It's in a couple of days. They'll take 3 days off and they'll go out one more time before we start talking about layoffs. That sounds kind of strange, but we already planning on. We have potential dates for layoffs right now when it comes to our temporary and career seasonals. Next slide.
That's it.
Okay, yeah. So that's it. Like I said, I think the field offices covered the majority, like the main fires within there, but yeah, very busy. Thank you.
Should we take questions from RAC members?
Yes. So anybody have any comments for RAC? Let's see. Michael, I'll lower your hand for you.
Just a quick question, comment to Nick about the South Cow Mountain. I think that's awesome about the grant for the Scotty's Creek. I got 35 plus years experience with that little gravel bar area. Are there going to be improvements is my question. Are there going to be improvements to the OHV staging area? Because it's gotten constrained and it's behind the K-rail and brambles right now. So is there kind of consideration for trailer parking? Because currently everybody's using the gravel bars.
Who's that question for?
Nick.
Nick.
Okay. You know, I lost my internet just kind of. Can you repeat the question, actually, if you don't mind?
Okay, I'll keep it really quick. Congrats on the grant application. I have 35 years experience using that little staging area on Scotty's Creek. And are there considerations for OHV trailer parking and everything else? Because currently everybody is using the gravel bar in the creek.
So yeah, I mean that would be part of it. We definitely want to, but the bridge is key, right? I mean, we can't really move forward without a bridge. We can make little improvements here and there, but nothing significant. And so another thing we're doing out there, I don't know if you've been out there recently, we've sealed off the Scotts Creek. We've had a fence there for over a year, which we've never, which we've never had before. My predecessors never did it. And we had all these OHVers going up and down the creek for years. And I'm just like, what? I mean, this can't go on. And so we put an end to that. And you know, at first it was tough. You know, the community didn't like it because for decades they had a playground out there to go up and down the river. And, you know, I don't want to put blame on my predecessors, but honestly, nothing was getting done. And I'm like, we can't have OHV riders going up and down a river and destroying it. And that's what's been going on. And so we put a fence there and we've had success. We're keeping people out and our law enforcement is targeting that area. And it was hard for the community at first, but now it's like they get it, you know. No, you can't trample a river. You can't destroy the river habitat, and you know, stay on your side, so to speak. And so we kind of done that, and with success, I think, you know, everyone think it's been successful, and the tribes have allotted it. You know, everyone's been happy about it, but ultimately, what we really need there is that bridge. That's why we put in the grant, and then, you know, when we do that, we're going to be able to make major improvements to that whole area, including providing trailer traffic or trailer parking.
Thank you.
Okay, looks like we've got Bob. Bob.
Sorry, I'm wondering if Reb might go first. I want to make sure his question gets in.
Okay, all right. Reb, do you want to go?
Yes, I just have a couple of quick comments. This fire situation this year, late in the season, I mean, we kind of dodged a bullet for a while, and then, you know, we suddenly have all these fires. And you know, we all understand that there's climate change, there's increased population, increased use, all of these issues play into the fire situation. But I need to commend particularly David Brinsfield and all of our other partnerships that we have in fighting these fires, and certainly all of our field offices cooperations. I mean, it's really essential. I appreciate even, you know, I'm sitting in the field office for Central Coast, and Zachary's comments as our director is, you know, he's exhausted from being up in managing those fire issues that are going on and affecting Clear Creek and other areas in San Benito County. So I commend everybody for the diligent work that they're doing on basically trying to save certainly lives as a priority, then structures and land itself. And the impact that it has for us on all the species in those areas that are just getting devastated. So that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Bob, you're up.
Yeah, I wrote you Phil and Chris a memo on the fire that occurred on Mulligaloo, the Ridge Fire. It was a fairly small fire, but a lot of damage was done by CAL FIRE in that fire. And you know, everybody greatly appreciates and admires the firefighting abilities and what CAL FIRE brings to those areas, but bad things can happen too. And this is like with bulldozed tracks or areas of clearing that don't need to be cleared. And one of the reasons I think this happens is it has to do with looking forward is the communication we need. And we talked about this, David, a little bit with the concept of pods, and you commented that you were working a lot with fire safe councils, and that's good. But SB 1101 is now on the governor's desk, and that's basically going to mandate the use of pods across the landscape. It's already on Forest Service land. It'll be on California private lands, and the blank white spot on the map then becomes the BLM. And I think the BLM should work on early adoption of the pod concept and start moving this forward as soon as possible. I think that the National Monument, the Berryessa Mountain National Monument in particular, needs to do this because more than half of the monument has pods on Forest Service land, and we should reflect that. And the issue really is communication. And I know in the southern part, we have a lot of BLM firefighting capabilities. In the north part, it's all contracted with CAL FIRE. Forest Service, of course, and all our agencies help out. But if we develop a culture around this concept of pods, of knowing there's public involvement, knowing the values and the resources within are being identified, knowing what all those values and resources are. And the example that got me going was on this, right next to the road is a beautiful, or was a beautiful Adobe lily, a rare endangered species that was bulldozed. And just, we'll find out, but it looks like it pretty much got eradicated. And I think we can avoid those kinds of errors. Sometimes I think we have to change the culture. So when people talk about fire, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily put all fires out immediately. And so I want to have more discussion, if possible, about this. We're not having another meeting to the 5th, and they're going to start this process in 2025. But I think I would really think that the BLM ought to start developing a leadership role in this process. So thanks. And David, I'd be happy to listen to your thoughts or comments. And I don't know, because you've been in this fire season, and if you've had the opportunity to be up to speed on some of the legislation like this, it's a state bill, doesn't affect public lands, but you know, we're the white spot on the map right now.
Bob, could you
may I just ask, what was that bill number, Bob? I didn't catch that.
B 1101. It was Monica Limon from Ventura carried the bill. It passed unanimously in both the Assembly and Senate.
Chief Brinsfield.
Yeah, so just real quick, Bill. Yeah, I'm aware of the bill. I did have conversations. I've had conversations with James Newman and some folks from the California State Office